creature of habit.
Good evening. This is the October 9th, 2012 meeting of the Town of Fairfield Town Planning and Zoning Commission. The meeting will now come to order.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Barrett, what is the motion?
I would like to add a planning discussion to the end of our agenda, specifically to get an update from you and staff on the planning areas discussed at our September 4th planning meeting. I understand that some of the items on public hearing won't be presented, and we might have some extra time. I figured it might make sense to try to use that time to at least just get an update.
Absolutely. Is there a second on that motion? Motion has been moved and seconded by Commissioner Jacobs. Made the second. Commissioner Jacobs is correct, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Barrett is also correct. For the members of the public that are here, there are 3 items down for public hearing this evening. The first is 960 Mill Hill Terrace. The second is 145 Brookside Drive, and the third is 41 Fairfield Beach Road. The first 2 items have been withdrawn from consideration tonight. Mill Hill Terrace has requested they not go forward. 145 Brookside Drive likewise will not be going forward. So if anyone is here from the public who wanted to listen to and/or comment on 960 Mill Hill Terrace, the subdivision application of Round Hill Road Associates for 3 lots in an A zone, that will not occur tonight. And anyone who is here for 145 Brookside Drive, subdivision application of Brookside Acres LLC for 3-lot subdivision, that also will not go forward tonight. So the only item on public hearing is going to be the 41 Fairfield Beach Road special exception coastal site plan application of the Fairfield Beach Club Incorporated regarding the paddle tennis warming hut. So is there any discussion on this motion that we amend the agenda to add a planning discussion to the end following public hearing? Members of the public can't comment, but if you have a question, sir, you can walk over to staff and they can. If it's about scheduling on one of those items.
I was just wondering whether the application for 145 was withdrawn or
No, it has not been withdrawn. It's just postponed.
It's postponed. But we don't have. It's a good question, sir. Do we have a date for that? We don't have a date when it's going to be back on. So you may want to sort of check with the staff, and they could update.
I don't, but I will know by the end of the week whether it's going to be at the next meeting, which is the 23rd of this month. But
we don't know. At some point, we expect it to be back. We just don't know when.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I should have clarified it's withdrawn from consideration this evening. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend the agenda by adding those items?
Yes. Yeah, the planning discussion is a continuation of what we were talking about September 5th.
Essentially, I would anticipate to continue discussing it and to talk about scheduling the public hearing on those items and moving forward to a vote. Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to keep us here a long time. Just I figured we have some time. We're all together. We can have a public discussion. Yeah, just the items we talked about on September 4th. Just where are we with any? How are we progressing to getting them to public hearing? That was what I was thinking, Mr. Commissioner Suter.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor of amending the agenda pursuant to the motion of Vice Chairman Barrett, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item carries unanimously. Next item is meeting minutes from the September 18th, 2012 meeting. Is there a motion? Thank you. Commissioner Wagner's moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrett is seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as prepared? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved unanimously. Next item, 5401 Park Avenue. This is a request of Attorney Fitzpatrick on behalf of Sacred Heart University to consider revisions to previously approved plans in an R3 zone. Now, this is down on the agenda. Mr. Went will discuss it. It's down for a similar reason as we did the Commerce Drive property at the Metro Center, to update you folks on a request of Attorney Fitzpatrick on behalf of Sacred Heart for some changes. You have in your packet the documents indicating what those changes are. Mr. Went?
Yeah, I would compare this more recently reviewed the changes to Blackrock Congregational Church, similar type of thing. In March of this year, this commission approved a fairly sizable building on the corner of Park Avenue and Jefferson Street. You may recall there were going to be 2 schools in there, the School of Education and the School of Business. The universities decided to keep the School of Education where they currently are in Trumbull and instead house this communications school in here with the School of Business. But aside from that, they've proposed some structural changes to the building. The primary change is the drastic reduction in the amount of underground parking. If you recall, the cross-section of this building, there were basically 2 floors below grade that were parking and mechanical space, and then 2 floors above grade, which were the occupied spaces. There is a net reduction in floor area occupied floor area of about 5,800 square feet. There are proposed now 65 fewer indoor parking spaces, and those 65 spaces are now proposed to be on-site parking. The building is very similar to what it was before. They've kind of taken the 2 parallel wings and moved them a little bit closer together, so instead of a courtyard in between, there's now a covered atrium. And you've got a fairly detailed packet showing some revisions to some of the building materials. Instead of some of the metal panels, they're looking to go with brick and copper to more closely match some of the other building, the more recent building that they did, their chapel in the student dining hall that's beyond that. So the footprint is modestly different in that they're bringing the 2 wings closer together. There's a reduction in floor area of 5,800 square feet. The parking count remains the same. However, 65 of those spaces are coming outside to expand the surface parking. And you've got kind of I believe on the same page, layouts there of the previous proposal versus the current proposal for your comparison. What they are asking is for you to make an evaluation of these changes to see whether or not a new application is warranted, or whether you believe, as what they are hoping you would agree, that this is consistent with the original approval and doesn't rise to the level of requiring a new permit application. If you need anything more specific, I can attempt to answer any questions you might have. I do have full-size plans if anybody wants to look at them, but I personally preferred the drawings that you guys have.
Yeah, the only thing I noticed looking at them, I can see a significant increase in trees in the parking lot, the way I think they've gone from 30-something to over 50 trees. Mm-hmm. But when I look at the drawings on Park Avenue view, which is, well, I should say, how many pages is it? It's the second and third page, if you will, on the spiral-bound handout. Okay. It has trees along Park Avenue and along Jefferson Street that are different. There's 2 different configurations of trees. And then when I look at the exterior views that come further, that doesn't, I believe, match either one of those drawings. It's a third depiction of the trees. So I'm just trying to visualize. That was an important part of our discussion, I know, what this was going to look like from the street. We talked a lot about the light, I remember, in the evenings, mm-hmm. and the reflective nature of the building. Do you know more information on that as to what their landscape plan is actually going to look like? Because all the pictures we have, the architectural depictions of the building don't match either of the tree plans they've given us, either the before or after.
Can I steal that for a second?
Same as if you look at the Jefferson corner, looking at the corner.
Are you saying the elevation perspectives don't match the site plan?
No, if I go to page, on this booklet, if I look at page 2 and 3, I have Park Avenue on the left, which has mm-hmm. A very uniform pattern of 3 trees coming out perpendicular from the building, sometimes 4 mm-hmm. trees. The proposed change has 2 clumps of trees. But then if one were to go a few more pages in to look at the proposed view from, for instance, the Park Avenue view, looking directly at the building at that same perspective, those trees don't seem to match either of the other 2 drawings. I'm not quite following what. And then if you go further on, if you go again, look at the corner. If you go back to the original ones, look at the corner, the pedestrian connection to the campus. The original plan had, it looks like 6 trees of 2 different varieties. The proposed now has 12 trees in a grid pattern of 4 by 3. But then if you go to the picture further on, it shows 3 trees, matching neither of those patterns again. So I didn't know if you had.
Well,
What we're exactly, and I know.
I don't know that any of these drawings were submitted for the purpose of representing what their final landscaping plan is to be. I think they were, I don't know why they would have changed from one drawing to the next, but I think the purpose of this is really to show the change in the footprint of the building and the scope of what they're building. We can certainly, if that's an issue, before making a final decision on that, we can have them submit, a more detailed plan. I would say typically the site plans are going to be more of an accurate depiction than the artist rendering type of perspectives. So I see the inconsistencies. It seems to me that the Park Avenue perspective more closely aligns with their original planting plan, not the revised, but I don't know what to make of the Jefferson Street perspective.
And the Park Avenue plan has all the trees on the strip on the road side of the stone wall as well, but neither one of their other plans shows the trees just on that side. I think it's something we have to think about. That was an important part of our thoughts on this building, since it is somewhat of a gateway building coming in, what you're going to see of it or not see of it.
Well, I could, let me make this suggestion. If, in the bigger picture sense, if the changes they're proposing are such that you would be inclined to agree that it's consistent with what you already approved, then I'm sure they would be pleased to submit, before you make any final determination there, a final landscaping plan for you to review. If you're inclined to say that these changes are such that you want them to refile a special exception application, then obviously that discussion will be part of that application. But I'm sure they would be happy to submit a landscaping plan for your consideration in the alternative to a brand-new special exception application.
Does any other commissioner have any comments, questions?
I
No,
didn't
it's
have one.
okay. I could see that.
On the other hand, I see what you're talking about. But I think when you go further in, to show the pictures, the use of block area, I think basically,
The mic's off, yeah.
basically what they just did was just change the coloring, but they didn't change the landscape. That's all. On this page here.
And there also, the other change, I know some of you are looking at the plans, as I understand it, they've taken what was going to be a courtyard in the middle of the building and put a atrium-type roof over it, which looks like it affects the configuration of the interior classrooms as well. They have more of an irregular shape now in purple, it would look like, and that are bigger than what I think were going to be offices, as I remember. Hey, Commissioner, yes. Sir.
I think the change in the exterior to use a lot of brick is also a positive proposal, part of the proposal.
Mike, not
Is that
getting,
on? You got to turn it on.
they're not getting.
They were all off to start.
Are they on now? Okay. I think the proposal to use a lot of brick on the exterior is a good one because it not only continues the existing brick motif in Sacred Heart University proper, but it is also consistent with other architecture in Fairfield. We use a lot of brick on our buildings, and it's a warmer material than glass and steel and other harder surfaces. Also, I think the copper complements the brick in a nice way, so that's good.
Commissioner Jacobs, then Commissioner Kennelly.
My concern is with the above-ground parking. We had a lot of discussion on that. They were talking about how they were dealing with the permeability, and now they're going from 72 spaces to 137 spaces, and no new information as to how they're dealing with water. On the old one, they had some grass in the middle of it, and there are some trees, rows of trees, but doesn't show any grass. We don't know where the water's going. There isn't the information needed for a 40% increase in parking.
Service parking, yeah.
Commissioner Canelli?
Just regarding the previous design and current design, are they different scales? I mean, for example, I'm looking at the Jefferson Street level, and I mean, is the new Jefferson Street level just simply a smaller version? I mean, do these match up? If you look, the original Jefferson Street level seems like a larger structure. Clearly, the center area is more open. This looks like in the new design, it's got a lot more in the way of office. I mean, I know we spent a lot of time talking about what the use of the building was going to be and what kind of folks would be there at what times of the day. There was a lot of time spent on the architecture and things like this. I mean, is the new version? The new version seems a lot more packed in than the older version. I mean, obviously.
Well, the biggest difference is if you take a look at those parallel wings, they've been pushed
Together.
closer together. That
Right.
level,
Yeah, so it is narrower. Yeah.
there's 1,430 square feet less on that floor in the new proposal.
Right. And now what was once dedicated to these larger kind of almost auditorium spaces has been removed for surface parking, it would appear. I mean, is that right? I mean, when I'm looking at this, it doesn't seem to, match up the same way.
I think the scale's the same, at least in the
It
bottom right.
is the
appears to
same
be.
scale. What I'm saying is, when I look to the right of the previous design, it seems that there's a number of these yellow or light yellow or almost ochre kind of classroom spaces. I don't know if those are represented by these gray spaces. I don't think so on the new design. And obviously, the new design has this large amount, the 72 parking space garage.
Mr. Wendt, on the bigger plans, the gray spaces Commissioner Canelli's referring to next to the parking, what are they? I can't read the middle.
Yeah, I can't read it either down here. It's really tiny.
No.
I definitely heading towards 5 foot.
Jefferson Street level.
I can't read those little.
I think that's largely mechanical space, but
Right, so what I'm saying is, as I look at the interior configuration of the new structure, it does seem really significantly different than what we approved. Am I wrong? I mean, this seems like there's a lot more packed in, and I'm not sure what all these things are. I mean, they do have a key here. It's a little tricky to read, but I mean, the original building, one of its appeals was it had a it had large spaces, and it was kind of an airy, apparently, it had a lot of the charms of a good academic building, in that it didn't feel like it was 2 pounds of bologna in a 1 pound bag, which you have in a lot of campuses now. As a matter of economy, things are jammed in. Here, it looks as a matter of economy, and also because of these parking requirements, that a lot more has been jammed into the newly planned structure. So I'm not just concerned about whether or not there's good drainage on the surface parking lot. I'm more concerned about, do we just sign off on something that looks, to me at least, to be significantly changed as a structure and how it's going to be used and all. I mean, it's a significant change to the surrounding community. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
it's mechanical.
my fears can be allayed here. Yeah, please go ahead if you think so. Commissioner Suter, I might let off the chairman. Commissioner Suter.
I was just going to add that the change in structure seems to be dictated by conditions in the terrain and not by any arbitrary decision on the part of the university and its architects. I think they're trying to cope with, I think they expressed a ledge and also groundwater problems in the terrain. I'm sure they would much rather have that extra underground level to hide the cars, but they're precluded from doing that by the physical conditions they're confronting.
Right.
Mr. Canelli, maybe we can go back for a second. You raised an interesting point on that picture with the parking, with those gray areas.
Right.
I guess there's a current design, a previous design. They're calling it current design, previous design.
Yeah, that's what it is. In other words, the left-hand designs are obviously, look, I mean, Commissioner Suter makes a reasonable point. There's an issue here related to the that probably Commissioner Alessi would know best as an expert on this stuff, is that sometimes the landscape does drive the shape of a structure. So we have to deal with those changes. All I'm saying is if it's not something that's going to be either a great cost in terms of significant time for us to get it on the schedule, it seems like maybe it is worth reviewing and talking again with some of these folks to make sure that all these questions are answered. I mean, I don't want to slow down the process. I'm a great supporter of the university. I think it does a wonderful job, and the school of business is excellent. And I'm sure there were very valid reasons why they thought the communication school belongs with the education school. That's not our issue. But there is a lot of, it seems like looking at this and reading through, that it's definitely not just going from a building that's predominantly metal and silver to a building that's copper and brick. It's also a building that seems to have a significantly changed internal configuration in certain ways.
No, my point was, it was more, what you were making is, if the current design is what they're asking us now, the 72 spaces they show are the surface spaces, but I don't see how they line up. Their drawing they have a few pages earlier doesn't match.
Right, well, that's what I mean.
No, that's indoor. That's indoor parking. That's structured parking. That's not surface parking you're looking at.
So they're still proposing 72 underground
Correct.
spaces.
Correct.
Instead of 138, they're proposing 72, so they bring an
Right.
extra 60 above ground.
Right. There was a layer below this layer.
There were two
on
layers.
the previous
So-
plan that's been.
All right, so what I'm saying is this, right, so are these two the same? Is this the current, is this what was going to be designed, and this is, I mean, and this is what's going to be executed? This was designed, this is what now is designed, and what they want to execute?
That's correct. What's the left-hand side of the page is the previous design.
Right.
Right-hand side of the page is the present proposal.
Jerry Frost, leaves a full set if you want to look at them.
Yeah, it doesn't show the mechanicals, the change in mechanicals either on the plan, on these pictures.
Commissioner Barrett?
Well, and everybody else, is it, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. In viewing this, I would agree with Mr. Wendt at the start. I would compare this similar to the Blackrock Congregational Church, where there was some, whatever reason, value engineering, whatever, they came back with a different proposal. It was lower scale. We approved it in executive session. Here, the problem is with doing so is we can't ask them, we have a lot of questions and we're speculating. The problem is in this format, we really can't ask them direct questions, which may clear up some of the commission's concerns. As far as the architectural change, I'm more concerned like with what's visible to the public, less so with the internal layout or where the atrium is or things like that, which was, really affects the students in the university. But still, it does seem like there are some questions on it. Overall, I would agree with Mr. Jacobs, so my main concern would be, okay, you increase the surface parking, is the drainage and the runoff, is that still going to be okay? And as far as the landscaping goes, I don't understand really since the building is smaller, and again, it's just a question we would ask, why don't they have the same landscaping plan, but just more trees in the parking lot because they have more surface parking? That would seem to be the simple solution, which we're looking, well, how do we go from all these rows of perpendicular trees to clumps? Well, is that the new plan or is it something else? So I think we just have a lot of unanswered questions. But I don't want to advocate a special exception. I wish there was some other path to take to do this.
No, you could request the hearing with the applicant to describe what the changes are.
This we did with the Metro.
It would
Right.
be under your
What do we do
current.
with the Metro Center?
The last revision in the Metro Center, you did have the applicant and their representatives make a presentation and had a dialogue, so.
It's not a new
that's-
application for us.
You can do that as well.
I think that may be the best from what I'm hearing, and rather than having a full presentation, which, we're very familiar with the site and what we approved building-wise, addressing some of the issues that are coming up, specifically the landscaping of the trees, and number two, the parking lot. And the surface of the lot, as Commissioner Jacobs raised, the permeability of it, the trees in the lot, the esplanades or the islands, how it's gone from a wide island to a narrow one, what the parking flow is. We don't see a parking flow in this lot now. It's doubled in size, but we don't, we used to have a sidewalk coming up the middle for pedestrians. Now there appears to be no pedestrian flow plan at all, which may have the pedestrians crossing the loading dock to get in. There's someone to explain those kind of things to us, rather than a full presentation on every classroom and every atrium.
Okay.
Unless you folks disagree.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a significantly different layout, that one school is different. than what they were gonna do with the, I mean, I don't know,
Well,
but, you know.
Commissioner Wagner.
I mean, your last comment may be the most significant, just looking at the new proposal, that there's no pedestrian flow from the parking lot to the building. You know, the prior plan had looks like a sidewalk from the parking lot over to the main entry there, even though it does cross the loading zone, but the new plan doesn't provide for that. Not that I can see.
Actually, it looks like they've added a stone wall across the pedestrian pathway that used to be there. The red
Yeah.
being the stone wall.
Yeah. Is the red a stone wall?
I believe so. That seems to match the stone wall on the location of the stone wall in the other drawings.
It says, yeah, so here you have this, and there's nothing red here at the bottom.
It's not labeled, but Commissioner Jacobs, I mean, it seems to be the stone wall. So there's now a stone wall, so you'd have to walk on the road to get from a 137-space parking lot. Which, maybe I'm sure there's an explanation.
I think that's the point that everybody's making. Right?
So is that the consensus of the commission that we have it down for a public hearing and ask the applicant and council to come and speak with us and address these issues that we've articulated this evening?
I mean, that would be my preference. I think only the option is to say, yeah, it's, and it probably, in the spirit of this, yeah, I mean, it probably is consistent, but I don't think we have enough information to make that determination or to answer our questions. So we could require them to have a whole new special exception. We could approve it. I don't think we're ready to do that, or we can ask them to explain it. So I think I would advocate that course, to have them come and answer our questions about it, and then we can make a decision from there. Whether you know, what to do with this.
Okay. All right, I don't think we need a formal motion on that. It's more of a discussion topic, so if you can invite
Schedule-
them at one of our next
schedule
meetings. Thank you. Next item is 303 to 425 Tungsten Hill Cutoff. Request of Lee Myro for a one-year recertification of approval for the sale of Christmas trees.
You may recall last year you approved, this address is actually, if you stood up and looked out the window, it's directly across the street from where we're sitting. Was the first year last year in which a Christmas tree sales were done. It's at the point of this parking lot over here. We didn't receive any complaints or any issues that we were aware of, and your approval last year was subject to annual recertification. So it is approaching that time of year, so he's seeking annual recertification.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Suter has moved to approve. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Suter?
Yeah, I think last year this was a novel suggestion for us in its location, and I think my take on it at that time was that we should sort of have a wait-and-see attitude and see how it worked for a year. And Mr. Wendt says there have been no complaints by the public. If that is the case, and the public seems to be reasonably satisfied with its operation, I think we should grant the approval.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
Last year when it came before us, I did not support it, and I will not be supporting it this year. I don't like the idea of commercial operations going in to a parking lot, taking away from the parking from the other commercial operations, and it undermines the operations in town that are actually paying property tax for selling the places where they're selling their trees. You know, it's like it's a business, but it's not a real business. They're there, but they're not there. You know, no, you want a business, be a business.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I cannot support this either. I think it did cause an increase in traffic, and I don't think it's appropriate for the lot. I think if you have a business, you should sell your trees at a business. I agree with Commissioner Jacobs, so I will not be supporting this.
Any other comment?
Can I, there's a question. Mr. Wendt, do you have any, is there any from you on the back, were there any complaints? What could you or Mr. Jovanchik talk
We didn't
about
receive
your
any.
experience? Okay.
No, didn't observe any and we didn't receive any.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the selling of Christmas trees at the Dairy Queen in the dead of winter for 1 month in December. That generates some more traffic in that particular location, but it doesn't seem to be a problem. And I suspect the same is true of this location as well.
I'm sure we would have been contacted by the Fairfield Police Department if there were some issues as far as traffic concerns. We had no public complaints come to the office.
I guess the difference, the distinguishing features between the Dairy Queen property and this is the Dairy Queen's closed when the Christmas trees are sold. That's an approved retail use on the post road. And when the trees are sold, there's no ice cream being sold. So you basically have a change. You probably have less people there buying Christmas trees than the lines that Dairy Queen generates during the summer, as everyone knows. So that may be one way to distinguish the two. Any further discussion by any member? Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I voted against this last year because I was concerned about the traffic during the holiday time. But, I mean, since they've had a year with no issues, I don't know, I guess I'd be inclined to support it. It's only up for 5 weeks, so I'm kind of changing it. Maybe okay. I'd have to be persuaded that there was more of a disturbance, but I'm pretty sure I was opposed to it last year because I didn't really want to try it. But now that they've had it for a year, if there were no issues, and again we're talking about 4 weeks of time, I guess I'd be inclined to support it.
Any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none. Application of 303-425, Tungsten Hill Cutoff, request of Lee Myro for 1-year recertification of approval for sale of Christmas trees, signified by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Mr. Jacobs and Commissioner Jacobson, abstentions? Item carries.
Is it 5-2?
Yes.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. Next item, 220-278 Pansy Road, request of Ray Panagutti for a 100% release of a $7,815 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this was scheduled for a public hearing last time. We did open the hearing. There was no public comment. As a matter of fact, there was no presentation. The applicant wasn't available. However, again, we did post it for a public hearing the way it was supposed to be published. No public came to speak. We do have the report. I think you have copies of it from engineering that all the work has been completed. So you have two options. You could either say we still want to have the applicant formally request it, or you could approve it based on the fact that you did open the hearing, it was posted, and there was no public comment, and that you do have a positive report from the Fairfield Engineering Department.
Thank you. Is there any motion on this item? Hearing no motion, we can take no action on this item. We'll go on to the next item. 1460 Post Road. Application of 1460 Post Road LLC to establish a second-floor outdoor dining patio with a request for reduced parking in the Center Design District. Public hearing September 18th, 2012. Expiration date October 18th, 2012. All the commissioners were present on this matter.
If you want to give you a quick overview, just to refresh your memory, what was presented at the hearing. Again, what this is the applicant is requesting the Town Plan and Zoning Commission pursuant to their section 12.10.3 reduce the minimum required number of parking spaces, off-street parking spaces required under our section 28 requirements. The owner is seeking to add a second floor outdoor seasonal patio to the property to provide a restaurant tenant with that said space. Essentially, what they're requesting is for this seasonal seating, a reduction of their parking requirement by this board of 12 spaces. The applicant proposes adding a partial second floor and a seasonal outdoor garden terrace to the building. And as you know, this commission had previously approved a special permit to construct a second floor building area. We all also know that that is currently under appeal, both the waiver from ZBA that was granted and also this commission's application. Just also presented at the hearing, some other improvements that have been to the site. The applicant has dug out a basement area to provide the restaurant with some storage. The building prepared the second floor building so they can add the office and the second floor portion that was approved by this commission to add office and storage space. And again, of course, the terrace is there for the proposed seasonal outdoor seating. With respect to the application, the patron area of the applicant is shown, submitted, a total would be 1,080 square feet, 600 of which would be used for indoor dining, which is already approved, and 480 square feet of which would be the seasonal outdoor dining on the second floor, part of this request. Two previous tenants, as you know, on this premise were granted separate variances for restaurant space that was Las Vegas Lounge, and then also the Rono Corporation, the owners of Central across the street. The applicant is seeking the commission pursuant to, again, our section 1210.3, to reduce the minimum requirement off-street parking to 12 spaces, again, for the temporary outdoor seasonal seating. The only other thing I think that was mentioned, part of your section of the regulations, I'll just go to it really quickly, states that, again, the total required number of spaces may, at the commission's discretion, be reduced. The commission must also demonstrate the adequacy and viability of the proposed reduction. It also talks about submitting a parking study indicating parking demand, proposed uses, and rationale for justifying the parking demand. Basically, the applicant did this on a verbal basis. He represented to the commission that there is a municipal parking lot across the street from the applicant's property. Secondly, there is parking along, as we know, Post Road and Sanford Street that border the property. And lastly, as we all know, there is the town of Fairfield has some plans of getting a number of parking spaces, close to 200, at the New Haven bound side of the Fairfield train station as part of the Metro North contract, state agreement, tri-party agreement. That has not taken place yet, but the best of my knowledge and my understanding of that agreement is it is still part of the tri-party agreement with the town of Fairfield, that in fact the town of Fairfield would take control of up to 200 spaces for whatever use they thought was appropriate. That, Mr. Chairman, was pretty much what the presentation was at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Devanchik. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Kennelly? Commissioner Kennelly has moved to approve. Is there a second? Second by anyone? Commissioner Sutter is seconded. Any discussion? Sure, absolutely.
I'm not an attorney. I did, read the requirement for the parking study. Is essentially the requirement for a written parking study just that, a requirement in the view of past experience of staff? Because I think one of the things in the course of the discussions about this application, since the redevelopment of this site has gone on, has been that there has been some positive feelings expressed by members of the commission about the idea of second floor dining at this location. However, what really seemed to kind of blow up any consideration of this was this issue of, before anything else, was the idea, must a written parking report be submitted? Because if that is absolutely it, if no parking study walk is what you and what the staff believes should be our correct interpretation under the law, then this is really just my asking for doing the motion for discussion purposes. What's
the answer to that question is, if you read it literally, there is nothing in there that says specifically it has to be a written study. It just says the commission that the applicant shall submit a parking study indicating blah blah blah. It's up to this commission to determine whether or not the information that was submitted to you at the public hearing addresses whatever issues or concerns you might have about reducing the number of parking spaces required for this seasonal use. There was a parking discussion submitted. It is part of the record. And very simply, it's up to this commission to determine if in fact that, first of all, meets whatever intended requirement is of that section. You gotta remember, you gotta qualify it here.
Right.
You know, if it was for 300 spaces, I
Right.
think you'd want a little more than for 12 spaces. So I mean,
What's the important point here I want to make is, because counsel for the opposition is a superb attorney, and one of the things he does brilliantly is to destroy things by beautifully constructed technical arguments that my mother, God rest her soul, had I gone to law school, would have wished I could have grown up to be able to do. But I just think that if any commissioner is simply going to say, as we begin this discussion, no written parking study, it stops here, then we have to make sure that they can do that. And it would sound from what you're describing to me is that since we had a discussion on parking, and since the applicant did provide that, and as we begin this discussion, it's not as though the sustainable, logical argument against this can be no written parking study, so it goes no further.
it's the majority commission's
Right, but I'm saying
interpretation.
it's not an absolute requirement.
It doesn't say that in the
Right,
reg, but
in your view.
But if you have not received enough information to make a decision,
Right.
you say that. If you have, then you go someplace.
All right, well, I would just say then, hearing that from you, because I really didn't want to use up too much time of my fellow commissioners, if in fact that's really what we had, it's essentially I think the term is prima facie, I don't know, an absolute case of must turn down. But if it isn't, the parking study doesn't fit, you must acquit, if it is in fact just we have to make a decision here, I'd ask that let's look at this as planners and put on our planning hats rather than just strictly our to-the-letter zoning hats. And by that I would say is that I think this is a superb location for this kind of dining. And I think it would bring vibrancy to that particular area. And my question is does a dozen spaces on top of the 15 that was usually allocated to what was previously Las Vidas, is it going to have a truly significant impact? So much so that the positive benefit, perhaps, in terms of the quality, kind of the experience of nightlife there, is such that we want to turn it down. For that reason, I'm comfortable with taking that chance because it isn't 100 spaces. In this case, it's a dozen above what was being provided before under the variances. And I know there'll be other discussions about should they go back to ZBA and things like that. I'd only say, if our argument becomes send them to ZBA, this is also a commission where some of those same folks who may make that argument have in the past been very upset when people went to ZBA and taking those decisions out of our hands. So I support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Sutter and then Commissioner Jacobs.
I agree there's some gray areas in this regulation, and the gray areas in the factual situation as well. In my experience, a study is always a written study, and I think the regulation implies that the study shall be in writing. On the other hand, you have a proposed use here in a building which has no parking lot at all. And so the question arises, how can you have a study when there is no lot in existence to begin with? So what you're really talking about is a study of the impact on the downtown area. And I'm not sure that could run longer than 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs. So I'm sort of on the fence here as to what is an adequate way of dealing with this requirement. You have a building that's 100 years old, I believe it was stated at some point in the hearing, and it's really sort of a grandfathered situation. Previous parking requirements were made, or variances were made by the ZBA. On the other hand, this is an expansion of the use to add more square feet and more cars, and therefore an increase in traffic impact, however small. So it's a difficult situation, and I'm not really quite sure what is the best way to handle it. So I put that out for the commission to think about.
Commissioner Barrett, then Commissioner Wagner. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Wagner.
To start with, they had gone to ZBA and they were denied. And when they were denied, they then decided to come here. I don't like the idea that people are shopping commissioners, commissions. Try one, you don't get it, go to another. We can also use Mr. Kennelly's term that he uses on traffic studies, death by 1,000 cuts. So he keeps on saying, you know, a few more cars on the road because of this subdivision, it all adds up. Well, this adds up also. On top of that, the property, the parking spaces that the town will get, they don't have yet. So to even think about those, I think, is premature. They aren't there. We can't say, well, we're sure we're going to get them. And my biggest concern is that you have a second floor over a sidewalk, the ability for people to be getting drinks, and the possibility of stuff going over the side onto the sidewalk, or people going over the side onto the sidewalk. I just think it's a real safety issue to have, you know, that kind of dining on a second floor unless it has a very, very high wall around it, which would defeat the purpose of their putting it there. So I will not be supporting this.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thanks. So I'd just like to respond to Suter's comments briefly. I disagree that because the building has no parking lot associated with it, there can't be some demonstration of a study in order to show the viability of the proposed reduction. It really wasn't presented by the applicant. We, as a commission, asked the applicant's attorney during the hearing, and in some ways, we were rebuffed. And the answer was, well, there's plenty of municipal parking that's adequate to accommodate the need. And when pressed, the applicant's attorney pointed to the lot across the street, the possibility of there being some additional spaces at the train station under the agreement with the town, the on-street parking, etc. But we also heard from opposition at the public hearing about the efficiency of the parking availability and so forth. I don't believe that we've been presented with any study, whether it's verbal or otherwise, that really meets the intent of the regulation. I concede staff. I agree that the regulation doesn't specifically say written study. It's up to us to determine whether or not we've been presented with sufficient information to make that decision, and the like. My real concern is that virtually any business in Fairfield Center could make the same argument, and we keep other businesses to the parking requirements, and they don't come and seek additional expansion for outdoor dining on the basis that, we don't have the parking spaces, but that's okay because we're in downtown, and there's lots of municipal parking, there's on-street parking, and so forth. I don't know where that line is drawn. Is 12 spaces not a sufficient enough incursion? This building doesn't have any parking. They've already been granted the variance for 15. So really we're talking about 27 spaces that we're allowing them not to have, so to speak. It's concerning to me also, as Commissioner Jacobs points out, that they went to ZBA said no, and now they're here asking us for it. So I have concerns about it. I'm on the fence. I have concerns about what this says to other applicants, and I don't believe that the applicant came in prepared to present the evidence that they met the requirement. I think that it was really in response to our questions, and it was anecdotal at best, and we heard opposition to it as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Wagner, Mr. Jacobs, a lot of other things that have been said. As the applicants present, they have no parking. But also, when we go to section 1210.3, I would say that this section was the result, a little background. There was a subcommittee years ago with Mr. Jacobs, Sherry Stenick, and John Nuff, and they worked on this entire section for a couple of years. And then in 2008, we all took it up as a commission. At that time, like, I think I count 6 of us that were on the commission when we actually approved it. So again, this isn't something far in the past. I find this a little less ambiguous, maybe even in staff, about what the intent of the regulations is. Yeah, there was no parking study submitted, I get that. It doesn't say exactly what that study has to be, written or verbal. And the applicant did present a rationale in his statement of use. There is something written that they say they have enough parking. But another key component is for multiple tenant parking properties with a common or shared parking area. First off, this was never even presented as a multiple tenant property. It was only after questioning that they said, oh yeah, we still have that one retail thing in the back. There is no common or shared parking lot. I believe we intended this for like the brick walk or other situations where you had a true multiple tenant property and they say, look, these guys will be open, busy in the day, we'll be at night, and present this entire thing about how it will work and how the traffic would go. And then we say, yeah, we have the power to reduce it. As far as out and out, just make my parking zero, that's really more a function of the ZBA, which they've done in the past and they were unwilling to do on this. So I would not be inclined to support it, and I think it actually doesn't, 12-10-3 really does not apply to this situation, what we were presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrett. It was something that I did raise at the hearing and asked the applicant's attorney about that section specifically and about the joint shared tenant situation. And we asked the applicant specifically if we granted this, would he commit that it would remain joint? He didn't want to do that. There was some dialogue back and forth about that specifically. So, yeah, I agree with your comments. And I would just like to say that I'm totally supportive of the outdoor dining scene, the growth. I think it's terrific. I'm troubled by, the facts of this application for these reasons and the impact it might have in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannelli.
I'm sorry, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think I pretty easily can sense usually can sense pretty well where the view is on this with my colleagues, and I understand that. So I don't want to use up too much more of our time on this. But my thought is this: 2 things. First, if there are members here who, if they might be persuaded by a more formalized presentation, written formalized presentation, where an assessment was done using data provided by the parking authority or other, private means, perhaps there would be some sort of option. Maybe they could return to us. I don't know how that procedure would work. But I would say that we have a number of restaurants along this strip that, if they were held to sort of the same test, would have a very difficult time, I think, in meeting some of these requirements. Because obviously the downtown section is the one with the most grandfathered structures in town, the one that has the most of these kind of hodgepodge of variances, et cetera. And I would only say that I think that when you look at where downtown is today, one of the things we want to do is as planners, is do what we can in terms of the, to bring vibrancy. Now that's a tricky thing. We don't want New Orleans. We don't want people falling off balconies right and left and right into the laps of someone pushing a stroller, and killing some poor innocent child or something like that, as described by Mr. Jacobs. Of course, I don't know what town he lives in, because Fairfield, if that's Fairfield, boy, I don't know where that came from, because that's an exciting place. That's a suburb I want to live in. But I think instead you have what sounds like a very small little upstairs space that would be kind of interesting visually. And again, I think we found in other locations, Malto, Wild Rice, it really does make it nicer to have folks out there. So all I would say to my fellow commissioners is I see tonight probably where this judgment is going. But I wonder if there is a way, Mr. Chairman, that we could at least leave open the possibility that we consider the chance that an application could come before us with something more formal. And perhaps the applicant did make a mistake in not taking more seriously these concerns and the need for data-driven analysis to help some of us who do think the broader idea is a good one, but also want to make sure that the bar or any precedent we set is high enough and is based on appropriate analysis. So I don't know, is that possible? I mean, if this is denied, is a reapplication possible, or is that?
I believe it is, because this is just a request for outdoor dining, seasonal
So-
outdoor dining.
right, okay, so they
I don't
could
think
return
there's any
and-
prejudice against them
Okay.
coming back next week.
That's
next
all
month.
I'd ask, is in the future, because I understand oftentimes when we reject something and we get a reapplication, it can be frustrating. We don't feel as though maybe the applicant is listening, but if in the future, this is just me, I like this sort of thing. I don't think this is a threat to public safety. But I can absolutely respect the Vice Chairman, Commissioner Wagner, their points are, and Commissioner Jacobs' points are well taken about the need to present a logical, data-driven argument, and that wasn't provided for us. So, if at least we leave it that way, I think that's at least some progress. That's my only thought. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder, since I think most of the commission is in favor of the proposal, excluding the parking issue, if maybe a good course might be to deny the application without prejudice to the applicant resolving the parking issue, either through a study submitted to us later or through the ZBA.
A denial or denial without prejudice, I think, has the same effect here, since I think a denial or a denial without prejudice has the same effect. It's a denial, but since they're not prohibited
Is
from
there a
coming
time
back.
limit on how soon they can reapply to us?
No, because this is just an application for seasonal outdoor dining.
Oh, that's right.
So they can come back. Yeah. My comment is, I'm somewhat of a strict constructionalist when it comes to the regulations. And if you look at 25.0, special permits in design districts, we say certain things shall be submitted to the commission. A written statement, a site plan. This is 25.2, and its subsections: architectural plans, stamped envelopes, and such other information as we deem necessary to make a decision. And if you go on a little bit, 25.7.7 talks about in order to have an approval, it has to be harmony with the neighborhood, it has to be a transition with like between areas of unlike character, protecting property values, and we go on to say to avoid undue traffic congestion. We don't require a traffic study there. We specifically don't use those words. We do not mandate that, but we make a requirement that there be a demonstration of avoiding undue traffic congestion. However, when we go back to 1210, we specifically use the words in 1210.3, shall submit a parking study. And I think a study is not just a discussion or a dialogue, but it's an actual study by someone qualified to do such. And you may say, all right, this is just one building with a couple of tables upstairs, great idea, let's approve it. But we're on a very slippery slope if we don't require one from this building. And these are new regulations, and we should presume that those of us who voted on this had those words in there for a purpose. But we wanted a study. A study is not a dialogue, it's a document, it's a traffic study by a traffic expert. If we let it go by in this one because we don't think it's really necessary, what about the next one when the restaurant across the street or down the street? We have to be very careful what slope we start going down, or we can't come back up, and we can't stop. That's my concern more than anything on this, is what our regulations say that we voted and we have to live by, whether we like it or not. Commissioner Wagner?
No, I agree, and thank you for very thoughtfully articulating the points that several of us have been making, and I would just add to that in any new application that the applicant specifically articulate how they meet the requirements of the shared tenancy in the regulation, how the regulation applies to them under the language of the regulation, because I don't think that that's sufficient in the record before us either.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item by any member of the commission? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of application of 1460, 1462 Post Road, application of 1460 Post Road LLC to establish a second-floor outdoor dining patio with a request for reduced parking in a center design district. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Nay. Abstentions? Item fails unanimously. Next item, we have a compliance application. Specifically 1511 Blackrock Turnpike, application of Ralph Cervero for an overall sign plan in a neighborhood Design District.
This building, there's a picture, or a Xerox of a picture, and I have the original if anybody needs to see it. This building is across the street from Stefano's Restaurant, if you know where Stefano's is. There's a credit union there that was approved last year. They're looking to put a sign between the two windows on the left-hand side of the building. It's an illuminated cabinet, only it's proposed to be the outline of the logo and the letters are to illuminate, so the background is not lit. It's 4 by 3 feet, it's 12 square feet, and there's a letter from the owner. The other tenants in the building at present only have small little name plaques at their door. They don't really see a need to have extensive signage, but should there be any additional signage, there is a commitment from the owner that the future signage would be consistent with this proposal.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item? Is there a motion on this item by anyone?
A move to approve.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Commissioner Wagner has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs.
Question for staff, if this, the square footage meets the requirements?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? I did note, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, I did notice on the way over, there appear to be no illegal signs in front of this building at the present time.
It was a good day.
Well, if there's an issue with illegal signs, I'm inclined to go forward to stop approving signs.
Yeah.
If people can't live with the regulations as they are now, the next time we get an application from anyone for a sign, or any change for that matter, if it's one of our traditional businesses, existing businesses with illegal signs, I'd suggest to this commission we don't approve any applications until they get in conformity with our current sign regulations. Just something we could talk about as our planning function as well. But this one, I didn't see anything illegal, at least this evening.
Yeah. I had a question.
Yes, Commissioner Wagner.
So on the second page of the submission, there's, says that it'll be illuminated with high-output fluorescent lamps, option for LED lighting. Is that LED lighting consistent, with our regulations?
Yeah,
If
that
they
would be
choose
within
that option?
that would be on the inside of the cabinet. As
Inside
opposed
of
to
the
you can see in the cross-section, they show 3 fluorescent tubes going across inside the cabinet. There's an option in lieu of that they use LED lighting, but in either event, it's interior to the cabinet.
Brian?
Yes, Commissioner Jacobson.
I'm not going to support this sign application. I just don't feel another illuminated sign is appropriate in that area. It's very close to residential areas, and for that reason, I'm not going to support it.
Any discussion by any other member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of compliance application 1511, Blackrock Turnpike application of Ralph Cervero for an overall sign plan in a neighborhood design district, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. We have Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner Suter, and Commissioner Kennelly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Item carries 4-3. There being nothing else on the agenda at this point prior to public hearing, we'll take a brief recess to reconfigure the room for public hearing. And then again to the public, there's one item on public hearing this evening, 41 Fairfield Beach Road, the application of Fairfield Beach Club Incorporated. So we will stand at a brief recess. We back on TV? Attorney Green, you're blocking the camera. Are you clear over there? You're good? Okay. We're back in session again. This is the Town of Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission, our meeting of October 9th, 2012. We've now begun the public hearing portion of the meeting. We have one item on public hearing this evening. 41 Fairfield Beach Road, special exception and coastal site plan application of the Fairfield Beach Club Incorporated, pertaining to reconstruction of the paddle tennis warming hut in an A zone. Commissioner Jacobs is going to recuse himself from this item? Thank you. Therefore, Commissioner Alessi is, well, it's a public hearing, so we're all on right now.
Mr.
Attorney
Chairman, members of the commission, members of the town plan and zoning staff, my name is James Miller. I'm a Fairfield resident. I live at 406 Old Post Road. I am the chairman of the Fairfield Beach Club Building Replacement Committee, and I am here on behalf of the Fairfield Beach Club, Inc., relative to a special exception application under Section 27 of your regulations. The reason we're here and the reason we're required to come before you is that our property is zoned Residence A, but it's a recreational use, not a residential use, and any construction, reconstruction, alteration of a building on our site requires that we get a special exception permit. Just as some background, although you are familiar with the club from a hearing a little over a year ago, we're about 5.5 acres of property. We're on Long Island Sound. We have a main clubhouse. We have 8 tennis courts, a swimming pool, a building we call the Junior Clubhouse with a dining and observation deck on the top, 2 paddle tennis courts, and a paddle warming hut. We're in our 126th year. I was going through my files today and found the deed where Annie B. Jennings gave this property to the Fairfield Beach Corporation to develop this club 126 years ago. As you may recall, last year we were before you to replace our junior clubhouse and our chair storage house with a deck on top. That project's finished. It came out quite nicely. Our members are enjoying it. On the far east end of our property, immediately adjacent to the east bathhouse wing, are 2 paddle tennis courts on the north side of a paddle warming hut. The hut is partially obscured from the street by the paddle courts. It is partially obscured by the east bathhouse, and it's on the Long Island Sound side of those paddle courts. It's a relatively modest building. It's 12 feet 3 inches wide by 24 feet long, approximately. And it is our desire to replace that in kind, not unlike what we did with our junior clubhouse chair house project last year, where we utilized the same footprint and the same height. This year we have a 42-year-old structure that, once we got into the examination of it, turns out to be more seriously deteriorated than we thought, and needs some significant upgrades. Under current conditions, the foundation, the support piers, the plumbing, and the wiring are not up to code. The building is in serious need of replacement. Our proposal is to replace it with a building essentially in kind. I have with me this evening a member of our club, Mr. Robin Coleman. He has designed this structure for us and will supervise its construction. He has a long history in commercial and residential construction. And I will let him get into the details of that particular aspect of our presentation. Relative to your regulations, we need to keep in mind that we're not creating anything new or different. We're replacing a building that's more than 40 years old with a building of like nature. From the street, if you look at it, it's approximately 24 feet wide. We're going to replace it in identical width. Its depth from the street, we're going to increase by about 2 feet 5 inches. We'll do that with a little bit of cantilevering because we're going to build the foundation and the piers exactly in the same location where they are now and use that same footprint, even though the bird's eye snapshot footprint of the building will be towards Long Island Sound, about 15 inches closer to the Sound. We're constrained in what we do by the FEMA flood zone. South of where we're building is the VE, which is the high-risk zone, which require a completely different structure, and we're being very careful to stay within that. We've met with various town officials on numerous occasions to have our map and our zone lines and our construction plans reviewed and approved. So if we'll keep in mind that this is merely a replacement. Your regulations call for the building that's proposed to be of a size, location, character, nature, and type to be in harmony with the neighborhood, to blend in with the town plan of development, and not to infringe upon, impede, or impair development of neighboring properties or adversely impact their values. I think that it's almost self-explanatory when you're replacing something that's been there for over 40 years with something that's essentially exactly like what's there. You meet all those criteria without any problem. I will tell you that this structure will be about 15 inches in overall total height lower than the existing structure, even though the way we've designed the hip roof is slightly different than the roof that's on it now, so the hip roof will be a little bit wider in its appearance, but it'll, unless you're looking at it from up here, will be obscured by both the east wing of the bathhouses and the paddle tennis courts.
So, Attorney Miller, what effect, if any, because I'm sure this is going to come up, will be, while you're decreasing the overall height, you're increasing it on the majority of the building. By lowering the roof, it's wider. What effect, if any, will this have visually on the properties across the street on Fairfield Beach Road, looking at the sound? Is this going to, how will this, if at all, obscure their view of the sound? Because while it is a little bit shorter, it's much wider.
Well, it'll be about 10 to 12 inches above the top railing of the paddle tennis courts, and that distance is only about 8 feet. So it'll be a piece that's this wide and 8 feet long that's a little bit bigger than what's there now. I would respectfully submit it has no impact on their visual perception of the sound from where they are. We've gone out and taken pictures from the street, from the far easterly end of our property, as far down as where you can still see the paddle hut, and we've submitted those pictures with our application, and I think you'll see that, and we've drawn in on that where the line will be, and I think that from a pedestrian point of view, the paddle courts, because they're closer than you, will appear higher than that structure. So I don't think there will be an impact. The paddle hut is obscured from all but the corner house. In our opinion, I don't know because I haven't been up on the second or floor of the third floor of one house to try to see whether or not the paddle hut is obscured behind the bathhouses, but I believe it is.
Was there any discussion or meetings with any of the neighbors across the street regarding this?
There are several sitting behind me, and we just spoke for the first time. I sent the neighbors a letter explaining what we wished to do, along with copies of our proposal and our statement of use on August 30th, and until this evening, or until yesterday afternoon, when I had a communication from Attorney Green, I've had no response from any of them. And so we had a brief discussion this evening, not about the paddle hut, but about some other aspects of our property. So I would say we've opened the door and been willing to meet with them, and haven't had them accept our offer to meet with them and go over these plans and discuss them with them.
Why are you exactly going taller at that location? Since you're not really increasing, I mean, it's a warming hut. What is the purpose for going up high with
What do you mean going up higher?
The roof line. You're making the roof line, I should strike that. You're making the roof line shorter because you're taking off that odd-looking, I think we can all
Taking
agree
off the
that's an-
staircase and the observation deck that's up on the top of the existing structure.
Oh, so there's an exterior deck there. Is that what that little doghouse thing is?
That's the top of the stairwell and the doorway onto the deck that's on the roof.
So you're eliminating the deck then? from this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's part of what we're doing, yes.
Okay, I was trying to, that was my next question, is what that little protrusion out of the roof is right now.
That's the top of the stairwell and the
Stairway to get
doorway
outside.
onto the observation deck.
Okay. Commissioner, yes.
Why specifically are you choosing to use a cantilever rather than piers on the extension?
Well, we are using piers. We will put 6 piers, 2 on the east end of the structure, 2 in the middle, and 2 on the west end. Mr. Coleman can probably answer that better than I. But we don't want to go beyond the existing footprint of the foundation that we currently have and dig any closer to the VE flood zone. So we're going to cantilever 15 inches out off the framework. Once we build the piers the building will sit upon, just to give us a little more interior space. We're picking up 61 square feet. I mean, the building now, I think, is about 290 square feet on the interior, and it'll be 350 square feet. It's about the size of a good-sized living room. And it is just one room.
Would you be allowed to put piers or a foundation at that point?
Out
The
that
current
extra
building
15
code?
inches?
Yeah.
Could we? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
We're electing not to. We're electing to stay with the existing foundation footprint that we have, simply because that's the decision we made. But we could go out to the edge of that because it's still within the AE zone.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker.
One of the criteria that you have relative to this application is the fact that it has no impact, the visual impact and/or impact on property values of the adjacent or neighboring properties. I have a letter from Linda M. Sepso, who is a certified appraiser. She actually appeared before this commission 14 months ago with a fairly elaborate visual presentation, having made some of it from a cherry picker out on Fairfield Beach Road when it came to a previous application. She's reviewed these plans. She's reviewed the site. She's been to the site, reviewed the site, compared what we plan to do with what's there now, and has issued her opinion that there is no impact on that, on the neighboring properties relative to their visual impact and/or the property values.
Commissioner Cannelli?
The question I have for the architect is, I don't know if he's going to speak separately.
He is going to.
So, okay, then I'll wait. Because this term slightly regarding the width, it seems as though, according to what you submitted, that there's quite a significant amount of width here. It would look like the area that is being expanded is not a little bit, it's about 80% or 85% of what the current height is.
That's height, that's not width.
Right, no, but I'm saying, in other words, the highest point is this small stairway that leads out into a still fairly small observation area.
Mm-hmm.
What's going up, it appears, is a building that seems to have more visual mass. It's equivalent to raising that roof, several feet, right? I mean, it's not as though you're even doubling the size of the of the steps and the staircase exit. You're filling out the entire space with building there above the roof, which you don't do now. You just have a couple spaces for chairs and a little space for a doorway. Because I hear the term slight, it doesn't seem. I'm not saying that in terms of total size, it's not huge, but in terms of the proposed amount, it's a good bit more width.
Maybe Mr. Coleman can design it.
The expression was the width.
Sir, Mr. Coleman, just before you speak, could you just identify yourself for the record? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr.
My name is Robin Coleman. I'm a member of the Beach Club. My address is 400 Hulls Farm Road in Southport, and I'm the designer of these plans, and I will be building them. In the statement of use, it says width, and by width we mean the width of the building. We don't mean the height of the building. The width of the building, east to west, is identical. what I would call the depth of the building from the sound back to the road is wider, slightly wider. The width is slightly wider. That's all I was trying to say in that statement.
I see, no,
From here, yeah.
But you would...
Further on, I go on to say the mass of the roof, which is what you're referring to,
Right.
is greater, and we acknowledge that.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure. Thanks.
And the height is a building height, it's a defined height, it's the midpoint between the eave and the peak of the roof. So when we're dealing with the zoning and building department, there's a definition of building height, which is a little different from what you would be normally expecting to mean by the height.
Mr. Coleman, while you're here, the drawing that Commissioner Kennelly is referring to, which is the blue photograph with
Yes.
the red roof line, there's no scale on that. Am I correct that that is drawn to scale?
That is drawn to scale. If you look at there's a, if I get this to work, there's a, I'm sorry?
Oh, they like you to move it. This commission can't see it.
That's better.
It's the fanciest easel anyone's ever brought here, Attorney Miller.
Well, I think that's actually a...
We want to block your views.
I mean, isn't it a table?
These are the same drawings that you have. You have them all on one sheet of paper. And if you look at this one here, you can see superimposed on the front of the building is you may find it easy to look at the ones on your, is the outline of the, sorry, my hand's walking. The fence is here, all right? And I've shown it here on this drawing in the same fashion as a dotted line. On the drawings you have on your, it's the top left segment of the drawing. And the dotted line there is the outline of the paddle court fence. It's the, you see this bit here, and then across?
Well, the drawing you're pointing to right there, is that the same drawing that's
Yes,
depicted
you've
on
got
the
your
top
finger on
left
it.
of
Yes,
this large
you've got your
sheet?
finger on it.
Which is identified as north?
Correct.
Okay.
So the 4 drawings we have on the sheet...
Oh, those same 4 drawings. I just made them, I've just broken them up and made them larger.
So you're asking us to visually compare what is ID'd on the black and white diagram as north with the upper left-hand photo here to get a sense of where the roof line is against where the fence line is.
Or the photo with the red...
Right, I see. We're the same picture, yeah.
So then the photograph we're looking at, the perspective, I see you're asking us to look at the blue photograph, which has the fence line in blue?
Yes. That's a photograph I took standing on a ladder with the camera level with the top of the privet hedge, which abuts the road, and that hedge, I believe, is 10 feet high?
No, it's smaller.
Whatever it is, 9 feet high.
My point is perspectives. I know Commissioner Jacobs has taught me this over the years as a photographer.
That is a perspective, yes.
Are important. The perspective of that drawing you're showing us on the easel, which we have in front of us, labeled
Is exact,
north,
horizontal.
that is exactly horizontal, so I'm looking straight at the side of the building.
Right.
So that what I see is the paddle tennis fence, if you will, which appears to be just above the top of the windows, would be looking directly at the side of the building.
Now that fence is going to be 3 inches away from the windows itself. They're right next door to each
My
other.
point is, then looking at your colored photo, that's the same fence I'm looking at.
It's the lower of the two. The higher of the 2 bars is the fence closer to the road, and the one that's just below the horizontal red line is the fence immediately next to the building. And that's what you see on the dotted line on the elevation drawing.
Oh, that was my question, why there's a much... I see what you're
It's a
saying.
perspective. No question.
Thank you. Does everyone see that?
Yeah, I
Commissioner
think I
Lett?
understand. So essentially, Mr. Coleman, what would happen if we approve this is, if I look at this photograph here,
Right.
this one on the upper left, the box that now houses the stairway essentially will have a companion sort of to the left of it here
Right.
that will fill that space
Yeah.
just at that line of the fence.
That photograph you're looking at is the same photograph which has the red line on it.
Right, this right
Yeah,
here.
it's the same photograph.
But I'm talking in terms of the massing, this is this lined out. What I'd have here would be massing that would be
Tiny.
that.
Commissioner Lessie?
In looking at your plans, they're extremely incomplete.
Well, they're not, they're
We're
not,
not seeing really a foundation plan.
I wasn't asked to give it, but I have it if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, and utilities, as far as the bathroom, the draining plan for the bathroom, and also on all your different north, south, east, and west pictures, I mean, you're showing a fireplace in here, but you're not showing a chimney anywhere on the roof line.
There is no chimney. It's a zero, it's a direct vent gas fire.
So it's gas. And where's the gas coming from? I mean, is there existing gas?
We have gas to the building.
There's no exterior roof or gas. I mean, everyone I've seen, there has to be some sort of exterior.
There's a horizontal wall vent which is about 12 by 12.
On what side will that be facing?
That'll be on the blank wall, which is the west side of the building. Yeah, no one will be able to see it.
But don't you still have to raise that to the roof?
No.
It comes directly outside?
Straight out the wall.
Up the wall?
No, out. Straight out.
It doesn't have to be above the roof line, a
No.
gas vented fireplace?
Yeah, you don't have any,
It should be like this, basically. That's right.
what I'm trying to say is, do you have anything about which fireplace you're putting in?
I'm sorry?
Is that right?
Yeah, we have to turn one of the microphones, they're not picking you up on
Do you have a
TV.
manual or a type of fireplace you're putting in, or anything
Yes, I
like
do.
that?
Yes, I do.
You have all that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's a regular 32-inch wide by about 24-inch height. This is the
Yeah,
opening
I know. I
gas
just put
fireplace.
one in, but they told me I went out the wall and I had to go above the roof.
No, only if you go up.
Because it would be along, is that?
Only if you go vertically must you go 3 feet above the roof.
Right.
If you go horizontally, you just have to stick it outside.
Well, okay.
It just has to be 12 inches below the eave
Right.
and 12 inches away from a window or other things.
How about far from the wall?
It's flat against the wall.
Flat against the wall?
Well, it sticks out about 2 inches.
Okay. And you have the rest of the plans?
Yes.
I will say that we have reviewed the plans.
Attorney Miller, you need the microphone, we can't record. Thank you.
I will say that we have reviewed the plans with both the town plan and zoning staff and the town building inspector, and they have both said our plans are adequate for constructing what we're building.
That's an informal. We can't get the formal approval till we have to go through the various steps.
You still go through the building permit process?
Correct.
Should we approve this?
Correct.
I want to address the issue of the view. If you would hand that out. Mr. Coleman's going to distribute a memorandum of law with regard to the Connecticut law on private views, whether they're protected, whether or not property value issues are relevant, and whether or not, in this particular instance, they play a role in this application. And I won't bore you to death with going through what it says in depth. What it basically says in depth is that the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, the Connecticut Manual on Coastal Resources and Landscape, and a series of Connecticut cases all state unequivocally that private views are not protected by the statute, by their manual or their policies or specifications. And every case I've been able to find where a private property owner complained about a beach or shorefront development that would block some or all of their current view, the courts have held consistently that that is not a protected view under Connecticut law. That having been said, the appraiser that we engaged, we asked to look at whether or not the property values would be affected by our structure as it's currently proposed. In addition to the cases saying that there is not an adverse impact on property value when a private view is adversely affected, our appraiser has indicated that there will be no adverse effect on either the view or the property values in this circumstance. All that having been said, I don't like laws, I don't like rules, I don't like hanging my hat or our hat on that type of a position. We have been extremely sensitive to the concerns of the neighbors. We evidenced that last year when we agreed to limit the height of our junior clubhouse and chairhouse building to the height that it pre-existed with the deck on top and to eliminate the application of a roof thereon. We have tried very diligently over the last 4 months to come up with a plan that is aesthetically pleasing. We'll provide a roof that is exactly like the roof on our main clubhouse and on that junior clubhouse in its shape and its angles and its coverings, so that it will blend in with the rest of our structures. We're raising that building up a little bit, therefore the mass of that building goes up a foot or so above the height of the paddle tennis courts to meet codes. The building doesn't currently meet codes for lots of things, and we need to get the height of that building up a couple of feet in order to meet codes and be able to satisfy the flow-throughs and all the other things that we're required to do. We have designed the lowest profile roof we can design. We will design a peak roof because we've been through the process internally with our members to have a cathedral ceiling inside. That roof would be about 6 feet higher than it is. We have eliminated every option that would possibly create a negative impact to our neighbors across the street. And based on the memo I've just handed you and the case law in Connecticut, we're 12 or 14 feet below the height we could build this building to if we wanted to. That would not be in our best interest, and certainly it would be counterproductive with our neighbors and their properties, and we wouldn't propose to do that. But what we've tried to do is create a very modest building. We had plans drawn for a building that was 5 times its size in footprint and several feet higher that we have basically put on the shelf and said we don't need to do that. We need to just replace what we've got. It is in fact a paddle warming hut. We want to make it a warm and friendly place. We want to make it a place that's attractive to our membership to use not only for paddle warming hut but for other activities. It turns out that during the construction of our junior clubhouse last year, we learned, we didn't know, that 3 or 4 days a week at lunchtime, there are bridge groups that hold bridge tournaments in that building because paddle really isn't played during the day by our members. So I think we've tried to be as sensitive as we can. We reached out to our neighbors in that regard, and unfortunately we haven't had the opportunity because of their inability to meet with us because of their schedules to discuss this, but I think we've talked and we're all trying to be as understanding and neighborly as we can to one another. I think this application should be explained a little bit by Mr. Coleman into what he plans to do. We'll make it very brief and then I'll sum up.
Commissioner Parker had a question.
Yeah. I think at the last hearing, I raised the question of public views as opposed to private views. And I think we determined then that in California, this building couldn't be built at all, that preserving the shorefront as a public view, and there is a road directly behind the clubhouse. So, I mean, I have a lot of concern about any construction. I'm hopeful that at some point Connecticut will start to preserve its shoreline and not allow construction on the ocean side. Anyway,
well,
thank you.
I appreciate that. I was not aware that we determined at that hearing that California had any impact on what we were doing. But I do know that the definition under the Coastal Management Act and the Manual on Policies for Coastal Resources and Landscaping has a very different view, a very different definition of a public view. And you, I think, Commissioner would acknowledge that the view would have to be either from a car, or a bicycle, or a foot pedestrian passing in front of, because the hedges block your view otherwise, passing in front of our gate, and from ground level, looking at those paddle tennis courts today, because of their height, the top of this roof line will be below the height of the paddle tennis courts, and quite frankly, I don't think it adversely impacts any view, let alone a public view.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I think maybe it's more for Mr. Coleman. I mean, whether views are protected or not, I'm not interested in that right now. I more want to know in your presentation what you feel is the impact on the view. So I just want to make sure I understand these photographs correctly. Where was the bottom photograph taken from, Mr. Coleman? What vantage point?
The bottom photograph, the big bottom photograph,
Big bottom photograph.
is the same photograph as the one immediately above it.
Yeah.
It's identical.
Yeah,
It's taken from the top of the privet hedge right by the gate.
Top of the hedge. Okay,
And
'cause let me see if I understand your view on the views correctly with that red draw. The higher bar of the paddle tennis court, the higher top is the one closer to us, is that right? And
Correct.
The one that seems to be like where the red is going above it, that's the one on the opposite side, right?
the lower bar
Yeah.
is the one immediately in front of the building.
That's one right in front of
And in the elevation north, it's the one that's shown.
Okay.
And it's 3 inches away from the fence is the,
Okay, so that's the
This one.
one next to the paddle tennis, and this is the
that-
one across.
this is the one
And-
that's 70 feet closer to the road,
And it appears higher just because it's 70 feet closer.
because
to the
you're
road.
looking up.
So it looks like it's higher than the paddle tennis, the new roof, but it's really not higher than the paddle.
If you were, they're 12 feet high and they're about 4 feet off the ground. So if you were 16 feet up in the air looking horizontally, this and this would be the same level,
Okay.
and you would hit the building right at the eave.
So from the vantage point you took it, from the impact, right there, it would come up, but it wouldn't come up quite to the level of the roof height that's closer to the road, meaning it would fill in, I don't know if you can see the red pointer, the door would be gone and it would fill in that space a little bit.
Correct.
I mean, I see some sky, and after this is built, I'll see a little less sky there, but a little more over on the other side.
Correct.
Of the building. Is that
Correct. But like always, your eye stops at the first thing it sees.
right? And I mean, I will concede that the actual paddle tennis courts themselves seem like a more of a impact to the view than the height.
Correct.
Because that's kind of
And if there's a photograph here from the side, which actually shows you the top of the fence, and then it shows you the lights above that too. So the lights go up another 5 or 6 feet as well. Always have done. I'm not sure.
Make sure I understand what the views as you're presenting, because if we hear from the neighbors or somebody
Understood.
else about what they are, I just want to make sure I understand these photographs. So I think that's all. Thank you, Mr.
What
Coleman.
is the height of those lights, just for our reference? Do you know?
Ooh. Well, the top of the fence, the fence itself is 12 feet high, and so I'm guessing
12 feet from what?
from the deck
The deck is...
is 4 feet, about 4 feet off the
The fence is
parking lot.
15 feet
From the parking lot. The grade isn't flat; it does a bit of a dip.
about 16 feet.
This is about 16 feet,
Well, those lights are maybe
and they're probably 22. I'm guessing. I didn't measure them.
Can I ask,
Commissioner Canelli?
yeah, thanks. Mr. Coleman, do any renovations necessary, do the necessary renovations necessitate this increase in massing? In other words, if you weren't adding this living room worth of space into this sky view, could you accomplish most of what's been asked of you in terms of updating and improving this? I heard a little bit about how this definitely had to be raised because of the issues related to
We
code.
have storage
Are you
space.
under-
We have storage space underneath, and to meet code, it has to have a minimum height of 6 feet 8 inches.
Right.
Right now, it does not. When we're finished, it will have a height of 7 feet.
But the massing that will be added here isn't a matter of necessity, it's a matter of choice by the club leadership.
Correct. We basically take the existing building and we raised it.
Right.
We also made it a bit deeper towards the water, which no one sees.
Right.
And then we squashed the roof down. We squashed the roof down because we took out the stairwell, plus we lowered the pitch. The pitch there is about 812, and we're down to 412. 412 is the lowest you can have with regular shingles.
And there'll be no more chairs on the roof? There'll be
No, the observation deck will be gone.
But people will look out windows, I guess? Or those
Correct.
windows? So now, the very small outdoor observation deck, which was accessed by this box-enclosed stairway, is replaced by a total enclosed structure where viewing of the courts below is
Well,
possible.
the windows are very much the same as they are now. I mean, we just stretch them all the way along. Right now, they go 3/4 of the way down and stop. We're just going to take them to the end.
But members who wish to watch from that perspective will be
Correct.
able to watch at that level.
Yeah, but also because we have raised the building, they're getting a slightly better view.
Right.
'Cause
So you've eliminated the dark spot then on the building, so really you could more see through this building. Is that a correct perspective, your picture with the red lines? When this is built, I'll be able to look right through your building?
Correct. This right now, the windows will go all the way to here. And the same will be true on the seashore side. However, the last little bit of the building is what is the bathroom, the wet bar, and the fireplace. So and that window is 3 feet wide approximately. So you will not be able to see through that window all the way through. But all these windows, yes, you can see all the way through, if you wish. It's not much of a view.
Thank you.
You asked about the cantilevering. The original idea had been to keep the existing foundation. We found it wasn't structurally sound. We couldn't do that. We can't build a foundation on 3 sides that goes all the way out to the edge of the building because the structures next door to it would fall down. Because as you dug the overdig, you'd undermine the foundations next door. So of necessity, we're establishing the underground platform on which this whole thing sits 3 feet inside, so we don't create an overdig problem. This building here was built, we don't know when, but 1920s. So we have no idea what's holding it up as a practical matter.
Thank you. Junior Miller, did you want us to go back to you now, or do you want the public comment, and then you'll...
I'll sum up after public comment.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this application? Just come on up and use the microphone, ma'am. Just tell us your name and address, please.
My name is Mary Tetro, and I live at 86 Fairfield Beach Road. And I'm here on behalf of some of the direct abutters across from the Beach Club. So as Jim Miller mentioned, we did get a letter from him dated the 30th of August, and unfortunately we have had lots of neighbors on planned vacations prior to this coming. So we haven't met personally with Jim, but we have had...
He may not be picking you up.
This. Okay, how's that? Is that better? Okay.
Jerry, are you picking it up on TV?
Okay. So anyway, we do appreciate hearing from the Beach Club directly this time about the changes in their structural modifications to the existing elevations and buildings. And so we thank him for that notice. And we also thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. The point that I really want to make is that the trend of the Beach Club is to generally seems to be intensifying the construction of their structures and intensifying the density of the bushes, the buildings, and the views are impacted by these plans. Their new structure, the paddle court, the junior clubhouse, was very well done in the end, and I do think it is a big improvement when you look at it, and so our fears were somewhat softened by seeing what they have done, which is really very nice. But that said, we're still worried about it. We live there. We have, the town uses Fairfield Beach Road. There's people pushing babies and riding bikes and doing roller skating, as well as those of us who actually live here and pay taxes. So we're worried about it. We're, human beings and concerned about it. So as we go forward and look at this particular building, you all have certainly picked up what we had in terms of the density of this new structure. Yes, it is a little bit lower, but it's bigger. And hopefully the views which will be impacted. Let me say, I don't care what their appraiser said to you. The views will be impacted because it's another 2 or 3 feet up, which in our houses is a lot. And so for some of us who had a view of the Bridgeport light, that goes away. But nonetheless, this is a project a building that they say needs to be replaced, that the footings are in danger. And so we're generally in agreement that this seems to be a reasonable approach to the continuation of it. But we really want to be on record saying we're worried that this is a trend about the elevation changing and the views changing. We are still in discussions with the Beach Club about these concerns, and we're hopeful that we will have some agreements that will be neighborly and that we can all live with, including the heights of the bushes that are newly planted if you've driven along Fairfield Beach Road in the last 8 months. So there's a visual impact on now not only the buildings but also the landscaping. But we're hoping that we will come to an agreement that will make this reasonable for us. We want to be good neighbors. We want to support them. But having the Beach Club here, changes the impact on our lives. There's lots of congestion. There's parking. There's all the excitement of the club and all the noise of the club that happens from this. But again, we live by the beach and we love the beach and we want to make sure that the public and we all have access and enjoy the views of the sounds that are so beautiful in our state. So I guess in summary what I can say is that we are hopeful that we will have a building that will be pleasant for all of us to look at, that the views will not be dreadfully impacted because it does impact our lives, and that we can come to some agreement on the future that we won't be here every year having a discussion and anxiety around what's going to happen to our properties and to the quality of our lives. And I am so glad to hear Ms. Parker's comments about understanding the public views and access to shorelines that I think we as citizens in this country really need to be aware of. So I think that's really what we wanted to say. We're fundamentally in discussions with the Beach Club. We're hoping that we will come to some long-term arrangements that we'll all be satisfied with. Those discussions are not finalized at this point, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak?
Yeah, also, we do have a picture here.
John Kermeyer, 116 Fairfield Beach Road.
What?
I just want to echo what Mary said. I agree pretty much with everything she said. I do want to point out one...
So what's your name again? I didn't catch...
John Kermeyer, 116 Fairfield Beach Road.
Kermeyer, thank you.
Been there since 1975. We have only one picture. I'll pass it around. You can point and thing with...
Well, we can't do... Unfortunately, we can't do that because we need to put into the record what you're showing us in the event there's an appeal. You can, if you want to email... We're going to close the public hearing now. We can leave the public hearing open so that you may submit the photograph.
Can you email it right now?
Yes. You can email. I'll show.
Do you have the ability to forward us an email that you receive right now? Do you have a town BlackBerry? No.
No, but I'm saying, like, if he shows this to us and submits it electronically to the town at the same time, and we look at what he's got on the images, doesn't that qualify that it's in the record?
We could do that as long as we show Attorney Miller. Sir, are you able to email that picture?
Yes.
All right. First of all, let the...
I can show you what it's... does.
No, the point, we have to
Can't
make
do
a
that.
record here
Okay.
because this is, in the event there's a legal proceeding.
Can I talk
So-
about the picture anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could,
We'll worry
before
about
you
emailing
talk
it
about,
later.
no, we're going to go step by step. What we're going to have you do is, or someone who knows how to do this, is email that picture to the address that the staff is going to tell you to send it
Write
to.
down the address, you'll have it in 5 minutes, but I need to concentrate while I'm sitting down and mess with the machine here.
I guess what I'm saying, does it have to be at the same time? In other words, does he need to email this first and then show it, or I mean, except he's going to email?
And now, let's have it emailed first. So I'd rather you email it first. We can we're not going to rush you. Take a minute if you want. Take your time, relax.
Just make sure that
It just shows, it's a picture from Dr. Pinto's porch showing the Blackrock light.
I thought it would be similar to one of those, but it's not.
Well, it shows the
It
picture.
shows the effect of the views from my porch.
Can I say that? No.
Well, are you still going to submit the photograph, or there's a change in plan?
Yes, I would like to.
Yeah, but I'd like you to send the photograph first,
So
right now.
email- I didn't know if there was a question for me,
No.
and you want to...
No, not,
as a matter of precedent.
We've asked questions.
yeah, I guess while we're working on the email, the question to you was, on behalf of your group, do you folks have a position as to whether you oppose or don't oppose this application?
Because in other words, right,
The plan that's been submitted.
When you say to us, we hope to have fruitful discussions, you have to understand that what we're really looking up or down for is, do you believe what is being proposed on paper that we must vote yes or no to is in harmony with your neighborhood and not impactful on property values? If you believe that to be the case, we just want to know. But if we approve this, maybe there will be some discussions, but it won't have the force of law. It'll be strictly whatever is decided. I mean,
And maybe you could consult with Attorney Green, and maybe
Can I
he'll...
just have 10
Absolutely,
seconds?
go ahead.
Okay,
If I
We'll-
could
thank
just say that I interpreted your comments to be that you were in favor.
Let me-
This is not on? Now it's on?
Now it's on.
Okay, sorry. I can't tell oftentimes. Yeah. So I interpreted your comments to mean that you believe that the plans that were in front of us for this building were acceptable, and that you were having discussions with the club for future propositions relating to the development or other plans that they might have. Okay? And I think that was the ambiguity in your comments.
Just, if I can just have 10
If
seconds.
you take your time, so you
please.
can let
We're
us know,
waiting for the
that's
email.
fine. We're waiting for the email. Someone emailing that?
Yeah, they're doing it right now.
Oh, he's over there, I'm sorry. We're still on, they're still broadcasting.
Look, don't think. And
We're
you're
still
a
broadcasting,
perfectly
picking up.
visual person.
Right.
I've known that right along as I sit
Where we are,
Hello, yes, Mrs. Coleman.
and is this on, and can you hear me? Yes.
That should be on.
We are in discussions still with the club, and frankly, I would like to delay answering that question until we have a conclusion from our discussions with the club as where we stand together. So I don't have an answer for you, I'm sorry to say.
Fair enough, thank you. We're just going to spend a minute here so we can, this modern technology we now have for Mr. Kermeyer to email into the record, then I'll have him show Attorney Miller what the photograph is before he talks about it. That won't be long. It shouldn't be that long. No, the planning discussion won't be that long. No, very brief. Up to 5 or 10 minutes, maybe. That's it. Yeah. No, it'll probably be 5 or 10 minute item at the end.
Yeah.
It's just more of an update from where we are.
We can even.
One more comment.
Sure.
I want to clarify.
Again, for the record, this is Robin Coleman. No, it's not. It's Mary.
Mary
Tetro.
Tetro.
Tetro, I'm sorry.
That's right. I just, in terms of the neighbor's position on this, as I said, we are not clear where we stand, but on the other hand, what I don't want to say is that we're opposing it either. Okay? And that if you, the jurisdiction of your proceedings to keep this matter open, I'm not saying that we necessarily need that. I just want to have final agreement with the Fairfield Beach Club soon and allow them to do what they need to do. Is that any clearer?
It is to the extent that when we close the public hearing tonight,
Yes.
we can't reopen the public hearing. It's closed, and we'll make a decision regardless of where you may be in your discussions
Yes.
with the beach club, just so
Yeah.
you understand that.
Yes,
And the plans before us are the plans before us.
that's correct.
And that is really Commissioner Keneally's, that is really Commissioner Keneally's point, is that we have an application before us, we're at the public hearing is going to close.
Yes.
And then we then take up debate on whether to approve the application that's before us.
Right.
In that sense, our hands are somewhat tied.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Kermeyer, you've emailed that picture you wanted to discuss? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, could you show that to Attorney Miller, please? You've seen it? Okay. For the record, Attorney Miller has seen the photograph. Now, go ahead, sir.
Just wanted to make the point that all these little additions over the years have had an impact. The long tennis shack, tennis building is directly in front of my house. I went in about 12 years ago. That destroyed my waterline view. I didn't make a fuss about it then. The building we went in last year, although it is the same height, it managed to get a few feet to the right, and it knocked out my view of Blackrock light. This one, Dr. Pinto, I was from his porch. This picture was taken 2 days ago. And his view of Blackrock light, these lighthouses are important for looking at, is right there. And that'll go when the new roof on this building goes in. Again, it's probably going to be done very well. It's going to be beautifully done. Beach Club is sensitive, like they say. However, every time they put in a building, it's more and more encroachment on our views, not only private but public. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Actually, you wanted to show us that picture now?
Can I now?
Yeah, now you can.
It's just an actual picture taken from Dr. Pinto's porch, pointing out that the view of this particular view of Blackrock light will be knocked out by it's 39 inches, and it's just enough to cover up Blackrock light.
Thank you, Mr. Kermeyer. We're doing public, you can't, no, because we're doing public comment now. You're attorney and you have a chance to rebut that, so yes, Mr. Coleman. We won't keep the phone, don't worry. While we're looking at this, is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak? Dr. Pinto, are you?
Well, I'm Arthur Pinto. I live at 56 Fairfield Beach Road.
Arthur Pinto,
56 Fairfield Beach Road. You know, I've lived there now for 7 years, and when I initially came to the area, we had the buildings we originally had. The junior clubhouse was then put up recently, which I must say is a nice building, but it was done after a lot of opposition from us to get the roof off the building. And with the help of the commission, etc., I think we accomplished that, and with Attorney Joe Green helping us. The current building, every year, every few months, we hear from our friends that something else is being put up at the Fairfield Beach Club. I mean, it's not only stressful to us, we do not know what's happening, we then later on realize that something's coming about, either by a letter, this time by Mr. Miller, but last time by no letter, just a notice in the mail from the commission. You know, it's tough for us to, as 5 members on the Fairfield Beach Road who are directly in front of the clubhouse being affected by it every time. Not only have we to pay legal fees to get things done, not only have we to meet. This year, all of us were out of town in August, so it was very hard for us even to get together. All of us run busy lives, we're all professionals, and it's very, very hard for us to, the beach house has unlimited resources, we don't. And it's very frustrating for us to see every so often, whether it's a month, 6 months, 8 months, to hear a new rumor come about. We had the Fairfield Beach Club put up the junior clubhouse. Very soon after that, I was having dinner at one of the restaurants, and one of my friends who happens to be a beach club member came up and said, "You know what we're putting up next year?" So I said, "No." He said, "We've got 56 trees coming up right to block your view." I mean, that's the type of mentality I hear from some of the members, and it bothers me, because those arborvitaes that are put up are intentionally growing, can grow to 70 feet, as Attorney Miller said to me this afternoon. So, we are stressed at this point, and it's frustrating to us to know that, yes, they can manipulate the environment to destroy our views, which is what can be done. The other thing which bothers me is this building, they say, does not affect views. It affects my view directly, as you can see by that photograph. It may not affect his views, but it affects my views. It affects the views of people on Myron Street, and I've talked to 3 or 4 who are not here for the meeting, but have agreed to help us with lawyer fees if we need to, because they're concerned. Carol Capozzi, who lives on Myron Street right across the road, her view is completely destroyed by this building coming up. And the guy, Mr. Murphy, next to her, also has an issue. Her neighbor in front of her also has an issue. So there are many of us being affected. Not all of us have the time and the energy to come for these meetings, and not all of us have the money to throw away to fight a very, wealthy beach club. The other thing that bothers me is, I guess I shouldn't say anything more. There are a lot of other things that bother me about beach club. So that's where I stand.
Thank you
for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Pinto. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment? Any other member of the public? Attorney Miller?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission.
One second.
Let me work backward.
Sorry, Attorney Miller, if I could, just very quickly. I didn't get this because Mr. Coleman presented.
The microphone might be off.
Oh, sorry. Did it again. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Miller, Attorney Miller. I didn't get to ask this because Mr. Coleman was doing his presentation. You guys stopped. But I want to ask you one thing. Is there any kind of been a decrease in interest in the club, say, over the last 5 or 10 years? Is the waiting list shorter? Are the current facilities such that that they somehow are depressing the desire for folks to earn membership? Or is there a significant, say, waiting list to be part of the Fairfield Beach Club?
I don't want to spend the evening educating you on our admissions process. We don't have a waiting list.
You do not?
What we have is you apply. It's very similar to what the Patterson Club has done historically. You apply. You go through a process where you meet with the admissions committee, you meet with members of the club, and your application is voted upon and accepted.
I apologize for asking you to educate me on this, but let me just, if I could follow quickly, I understand what you're saying. Then let me rephrase what I'm asking you. Are you finding it's difficult to find applicants interested in joining the Fairfield Beach Club with the current facilities you now have?
No.
Thank you.
I want to work my way backwards through comments that were made by the public initially. I regret that this isn't a courtroom and we can deal with hearsay because we've had many names of many neighbors who are inconvenienced or unavailable who have objections to this brought to us by a neighbor who claims to be very stressed by all the things we're doing, but over the last 6 weeks hasn't been able to dial our phone number and inquire about this or talk to us about it. It's disturbing because we've tried to be a good neighbor. With regard to the comments that the views from Myron Street are totally blocked by this building, At the risk of being accused of exaggeration, that's just so far from the truth. This building's been there for 42 years. We're going up 2 feet with that roof line above the existing roof line, and it's 8 feet wide in that little bit of distance. And this is the same argument we heard a year ago with regard to the junior clubhouse. From 500 feet away, that's so small as it doesn't prevent your view or take it away. It certainly is something you can see in the vista that you look at, but it doesn't take it away. With regard to the comments about the junior clubhouse being larger and moved 3 feet to the right and taking away a portion of a neighbor's view, it's just not true. This clubhouse was built exactly on the footprint of the building that was there a year ago, meticulously built that way. It's actually almost a foot smaller in its width, but it's on the same identical exact footprint, and it's exactly a half an inch lower at the railings than the building was before us. So I understand the neighbors are concerned we have some kind of ulterior motive in the things we're doing. We're not building new structures. We have a 42-year-old building that is seriously in need of replacement. We spent a great deal of time and with sensitivity designed a building that we think will be an enhancement to our property and to the views that the neighbors have when they look across the street and see the building. You know, there's no mention when they mention that we're worried about the trees, about the 3 or 4 40-foot trees we cut down and opened up the view. That doesn't get mentioned to you, but we did. The reason we planted plantings along Fairfield Beach Road is slightly more than a year ago, we were visited by a lady named Irene. She caused over $100,000 damage to our club, including 4 of our tennis courts were seriously damaged. But because of the sand and salt that was deposited on those tennis courts and on the property between those courts and Fairfield Beach Road, we had our property tested and we had to remove hundreds of cubic yards of soil and replace it with new soil because of salt taint and sand. And in order to do that, we had to remove all of our plantings and put in something that would be attractive and would provide screening, not only for us from the road, but for the neighbors from us. Unless they want to sit and watch tennis from their porch, that's what we're doing. But we've always had some kind of plantings along there. This building that we have designed complies with your regulations, each and every one of them. It's on the same footprint. It's well below the maximum height that you allow. We are expanding it by a whole 60 square feet on the footprint of the floor plan with a 15-inch cantilever out over the piers that will replace the existing piers that aren't structurally sound. We're putting a very small hip roof on it that, as Mr. Coleman stated, is at the lowest pitch allowed by code to keep the roof down as low as it can. I encourage you to look at the exhibits we submitted. I respect the neighbors. I understand. I don't live there, so I can't understand their views the same way that they do. But we have tried to recognize that they have views. We've tried to minimize the fact that we have a building that has to be replaced, that has to be moved up several feet in elevation to meet code. It's not our choice. It's what's required by the federal, state, and local government. And in moving it up to meet that code, we've dropped that roof down to the lowest possible pitch we can have on it. We think it's a very attractive building. I think it complies with everything within your regulations, and I would close by saying that we've been in discussions, unfortunately, for 24 hours with the neighbors. None of those discussions and none of the communications that have occurred in those 24 hours have related to this application. They've all related to other projects on our property that have historically been completed that still concern them. And so I would request that you close this hearing this evening and respectfully request that we have complied with all the terms and conditions of your regulations, have provided you with more than enough information to approve our application, one which was presented with as much sensitivity and empathy for the neighbors as we could put into it, and still replace a building that's desperately in need of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, one question before we close,
Sure.
before I close the hearing. Do you have any objection to the commissioners stopping by the property to take a look at this? Are we able to get in? Do we need to make arrangements to get into the gate?
The gate is open.
Why don't I necessarily mean inside? I meant from
You can
into
get
the-
on
into
the
the compound.
property. You can get on the property anytime you want. The gates are fully open.
Okay.
The chain won't be put across the gates before Thanksgiving. You can drive in the parking lot anytime you want. Please be our guest and come down and look at anything that you feel you need to observe. I think the thing that we've tried to do is change as little as possible. We're not changing the deck. We're not changing the configuration of the courts. We're not changing any of that. We're leaving it as it is.
That's what I was just asking, so we can get inside to do a walk around the building.
You absolutely can get in. You can walk around the building.
I don't think we necessarily need to get inside unless someone tells me to the contrary.
I would recommend that if it's unlocked, you are our guest to go inside if you want. It's pretty shabby. It's one of the reasons we need to replace it. And if there's any of you wish to have either Mr. Coleman or myself there at the time because you may have questions about specific issues that relate to our application, we'd be happy to meet you there.
Yeah, that we can't do because we'd have to bring the reporter and be back on the record again, because once I close the public
just
hearing,
making
we
the
can't
offer,
have.
Mr.
I appreciate
Chairman.
that, but just, Commissioner Wagner.
Thanks. Attorney Miller, you mentioned that there's storage below the, below. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just describe that briefly for me?
Well, currently, it's a fairly low storage, and we keep, I guess I'm possessed of a failing, which is I can't give short answers. But we provide to our members when they come down to the beach club what we call setups on the beach. We give them tables, chairs, umbrellas, and grills. We use Weber grills for them to picnic and cook and do things. So underneath that chair house, we currently have Weber grills and beach chairs and tables. But because the height is not up to code, it's not 6'8", it's more like 4'8". In order for us to continue to be able to put grills and tables and chairs and umbrellas and things of that nature underneath it and put a door on it so we can shut it, we have to raise it up several feet to meet code.
So
we also have to raise it up several feet to meet FEMA code because we have to put flow-through flaps in the storage space underneath.
So the storage space underneath is a full story, 7 feet? And then...
Correct.
All right, and then you walk up the stairs on the right-hand side, and you go in the door.
Those stairs will no longer be functional.
No longer functional.
From the beach side, you will not be able to access the paddle tennis court facility because by code, there's a 52-inch wide walkway between the paddle courts. By code, the new code, there's several steps up before you go into the paddle hut. That new platform has to be, I think, 4 feet wide. So there, that's not enough room for me to get through. A structure that high with a railing around it. So we're just going to close that off. We haven't made the decisions whether we're going to remove the steps or not. That issue will really be dictated by town and town staff as to whether or not, because those steps actually incur into the VE zone. We don't do anything in that VE zone that causes a problem, because once you cross that line, you enter into a slippery slope, as someone earlier said tonight.
So there'll be the full story, then storage underneath, accessed from the beach side, and then the second story, you'll access it from the the court side for the observation area.
Just to clarify, Mr. Commissioner, we currently have an elevated paddle hut with storage underneath. The storage doesn't comply with code. We're obligated to move that up to get at least 6'8"? To get 6'8" clearance underneath. So we have to go up a couple feet to do that to meet code. Call it a two-story structure if you wish.
That's not where I'm
But the
going.
town doesn't call it a two-story structure.
I don't know that I was characterizing it that way either, and that wasn't really where I was going with it.
Oh.
But I'm just trying to understand visually the way that this is being laid out. But I appreciate you
If you look at
explaining
if you
that.
look at the drawings, once we're up to 6'8", we have enough room to put an overhead door, so we'll put an overhead door there that we can bring down, and we can lock that storage space and make it more secure, which it hasn't been historically. All of the, there's a benefit and a detriment to having the code. Part of the detriment to having the code is we have to go up a couple feet. Part of the benefit of having the code is it makes the building and the storage space more functional.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a follow-up to Commissioner Wagner's question, which is, so you can go up 2 feet, but that going up 2 feet isn't the rationale for the additional 60 or so square, whatever, 90 or so square feet of that living room additional size space. You're doing that as a matter of choice, right? In other words, filling out the space horizontally is not a matter of...
That's a matter of preference.
A preference, not a matter of necessity. It's the vertical increase was the code-driven
The vertical increase
matter.
is necessitated by code.
Right, okay.
We could come out significantly further
Right.
than that 15 inches.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're still within the VE line, but quite frankly, Mr. Coleman has advised me that structurally, we can't cantilever more than 14 inches unless we build a very different structure, which would be much more complicated and expensive and
Right.
more intrusive than what we're doing. So we're limited to that 15 inches.
But so as long as we understand that it really, those 2 feet you're talking about that are connected to these code issues are the vertical issues. It's not the horizontal
No,
issues, the
horizontal
horizontal
issues.
massing issues.
We're moving the
Right.
paddle, we're widening
Right.
the paddle hut
Right.
from the paddle courts to the beach, a foot towards the paddle court and 15 inches towards the sound.
Right.
To pick up 61 additional
Little
square
square feet
feet
for that,
inside
to create
to
that.
make that room more functional than
Right.
it is. It's really not a very big room.
No, it isn't. And then inside, it's not very big. The other thing I wanted to just go back to is something when you were having a discussion with Commissioner Parker about, because it seems to me there's the issue of public and private views, and you've put together a memorandum discussing how the private views really essentially, as a matter of law, your view is you don't have consequence, the public views may. But in your discussions with Commissioner Parker, you talked a little bit about, I thought, about how the hedge, the natural growth, essentially blocks whatever you're building there from the public view. Is it the club's contention, your contention that as high as the organic growth goes up, is as high inside on your side of that growth that you guys you could build because the buffering is blocking the public view, and therefore whatever goes on the other side of the public view is not impacted?
The public view, as
Right.
defined under the Coastal Management Act, is a view from public lands across shorelines
Right.
that are public. We have currently, and have had for decades, private land that has had screening along its northerly border.
Mm-hmm.
And the point I made with Commissioner Parker was that if there were such a thing as a public view, but in this situation, under the Act, there isn't. If there were such a thing, it would be a pedestrian view. And be you on foot or on a bicycle or in a motor vehicle, the landscaping that exists and has for decades along there prohibits you from seeing our property from the north, with the exception of a 14-foot wide opening where the gate is into the clubhouse.
So what you're saying is, I think what I tried to conclude from what you said before is correct. If I were jogging along and on my side, if I'm north of you, along the Fairfield Beach Road, and I can't see anything because of what's already existing vegetation, then I don't have a public view.
That's correct.
But the point being that then what you want to do with your land on the other side, the private land, there's no view involved. Your view is that then the public view doesn't, in the law, it doesn't really allow for us to really constrain that.
And the public lands are not highways. They are
Right.
public open space lands under the Act, as I read it.
Oh.
But if you read my memorandum, you'll see
I'm
that
going to read
the-
it more closely. I began to
that
pick
the
through
Act-
it, but I want to be respectful.
That the Act is not definitive and is subject to a subjective interpretation of its definitions and policies. So I would submit that the views of concern here are the views of private property owners along Fairfield Beach Road and not vehicular pedestrian
Right.
or foot pedestrians, and so that's where we are.
But there is, essentially, there's really no, there is no
There's no-
public interest in your view based on the memorandum you've provided us.
No.
One last thing. What's your view of any kind of a harmony test here? As you pointed out, there are these subjective terms that we have to weigh, and one of the things is you are in a residential zone, and like any institution, you have to come to us for these special permits because you're obligated by law to be in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. And there are shifting criteria depending on who are the applicants and and others who are involved, the parties involved. But what would your view be of this concept of a harmony test with your surrounding residential neighbors, since you are in a residential zone, and one of our higher charges here goes beyond whether you meet X number of feet, but it is also to protect the public interest when it is clearly designed, something is a residential zone and an institution is part of that.
Well, as I am sure you are aware from your regulations, we're a permitted use in a residential zone.
Mm-hmm.
So the use is not at issue.
No.
It's permitted.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying that. We have many permitted uses in residential zones.
And the use has been there for 126 years. The neighborhood, I can assure you that within 500 feet or maybe 1,000 feet, there's no structure in existence that existed 125 years ago or even 100 years ago. The neighborhood grew up around us, we didn't intrude into a neighborhood. That being said, we're a permitted use, we're a recreational facility, we're on the beach, we do beach and tennis activities, and we're not expanding our use, we're not changing our use, we're not making a modification to our use, we're replacing a pre-existing building with a building of like size on the same footprint of the existing building, and I think that the question of size, location, character, and use of the building as set forth in your regulation is fully met by the fact that we're a permitted use, we're using it within the definition of that recreational use, and we're not creating anything new. This building's been there for 4 decades. All we're asking is that it needs repair. As far as harmony goes, in addition to that, we went to considerable expense to put a very special siding on the junior clubhouse and trimmed it with very special trim materials, all of which have no maintenance issue. The siding is called hardy board. It's a composite that includes concrete.
Right.
And is the same color as the rest of our buildings.
Right.
And the trim on the buildings is ASICs.
Right.
And the shingles will match the other structures on our property. So we've tried to make this building fit in and blend with our existing structures. And the neighbors' concerns about what's next, quite frankly, if you come down to look at the paddle hut, walk the property. There isn't any place to put anything. All we're going to be redoing, all that I can envision, I can't look beyond 4 years from now. Good, bad, or otherwise, you can question my judgment in this. I'm the president-elect of the Beach Club, and in 2 years, we'll have a 2-year term doing that. I know in the next 4 years, we don't have anything on the agenda. We may have to replace a fence that runs from that new junior clubhouse to our pool because some of the posts are rotted. But beyond that, we have nothing on the drawing board, and there aren't unlimited resources despite us being described as a rich, wealthy club, which we're really not. We have limited resources and there's nothing there. So all we're trying to do is maintain what we've got and do so with some concern for and sympathy with our neighbors.
Are there any final questions to the rebuttal case only?
Yeah, with regard to the level of activity of replacing buildings and bringing things up to code, are you doing any of that in anticipation of changes to coastal policy?
No.
Thank you. At this point, I will close the public hearing on this matter. And we will reconfigure the room before our brief planning discussion, so we will stand in a 2-minute recess. Okay, we're back in session. Based upon the motion at the beginning of the meeting, we're just going to have a brief planning discussion. I just wanted to update you folks a little bit as to where we are. As you know, our last meeting was September 4th, 2012. The Commission reviewed the draft regulations based upon the previous planning meetings regarding Section 29 signs, Section 12.5 neighborhood design district, and Section 28.0 parking. I put together a package for that meeting of some proposed changes, and I believe it was the consensus, according to the minutes, the consensus of us to move forward with scheduled public hearings for the new regulations. So I think, if I don't hear any objection to it, we'll have the staff get this on the agenda so we can have a public hearing on those items, and at least begin moving forward with our planning now, rather than, we have other things to talk about, Gateway West, affordable housing, administrative, but I think we should at least start with these and get these going. We do have some things upcoming. I've got a meeting coming up this week with the first selectman and some folks regarding affordable housing and having that dialogue with economic development and the Affordable Housing Committee. We've been contacted by the Forestry Committee of the town. They wanted to meet with me to talk about some items on their agenda. I cannot attend the meeting due to my practice when they want to do it, but Mr. Went's going to go on our behalf and get some information from them to see what they would like to. I think they have a few proposed changes to our regulations as well. So we'll get the information from them. We can talk about it at a planning meeting in the future and have them come in if they want to send some folks to talk about what regulations, what they may have to do with planting. I think they have to do with plantings that we allow, the types of plantings, and I assume the tree warden as well, and perhaps something that did come up in our discussions, getting him more involved, since we do have a tree warden with review of plants and things like that at an earlier stage, so we don't have discussions about things that some of us are not really experts in the horticulture field. So that being said, does anyone else have anything specific they want to bring up now while we have a few minutes to talk about planning? It's nice and warm in this room.
Real simple is, can we make a date for our next planning hearing? Yeah.
Our planning hearing or a planning meeting?
Planning meeting, yes.
Yes.
Dedicated planning meeting.
We could talk about that. We could do. I guess we could talk to the staff about what's coming up. I know we had 2 things pulled from tonight: the Round Hill proposal, which isn't on Round Hill Road, which is on Mill Hill Road.
We're booked through December at this stage.
Full agenda for public.
Unless you want to have right now, we have 1 meeting scheduled in November, which is typical.
Because
typically the second. What's unique about this November is the 4th Thursday of the month precedes the 4th Tuesday of the month. Typically, we don't have a second meeting because the second meeting would be Thanksgiving week. The 4th Tuesday would be the Tuesday after Thanksgiving rather than the Tuesday preceding Thanksgiving.
So we could have an extra meeting in November.
Well, that's something
I don't
to
want to wait
consider.
till November necessarily.
If you're looking to slot in a planning meeting. Our regular scheduled meetings, of which there's only one left in this month, one in November, one in December, now that 2 items have dropped off this agenda, will all likely get pushed to December.
So the answer is,
So
if you
unless-
want a planning meeting,
It would have to be an
extra meeting in November.
He lost me on the first Tuesday before the first Thursday, but I know what you mean.
The 27th.
I'm looking at the
27th
calendar.
of November
The
would
first
be
of November is a
the fourth-
Thursday, your point is, so the first Thursday occurs before the first Tuesday, which is
Right.
unusual. So
There's
we're
a
actually
fourth
having a
Tuesday.
meeting on the 2nd, which is the 13th. November meeting is on the 13th.
Right.
The 20th is Thanksgiving week, but we have an extra Tuesday
The
in
27th.
November, the 27th. But if we're booked through December already, we'll probably have to have a separate meeting for planning, is what it sounds like.
And
Well,
we're just saying
I
the
mean, in
27th.
terms of our own regulation amendments, we're going to track towards December. Now, we're looking at January unless we have an extra hearing. So I don't know what's more important to you, to schedule the hearing, to actually go to the hearing with the regs, or to sit down and have a planning
Well,
meeting.
That was, that was my, so I mean, we went through a 3-hour process, some of us, last time, after previous meetings soliciting that, and we got it drafted. Wouldn't, to me, I mean, I respect Mr. Jacobs, said we want to have another planning meeting.
No, mine is-
Let's get, how about getting these 3 on the agenda to get them done?
And then have a
before-
planning
if
meeting.
time is short. I'm just concerned with that.
You misunderstood. I don't want another planning meeting for what we have done. I want a planning meeting for the stuff we haven't gotten to.
Right, oh, no, I understand that, I'm saying in terms of time, do you want to schedule that planning meeting, or do you want to schedule the public, I know you're going to say both. Do you want to schedule that planning meeting, or the public hearing on the 3 items that we've vetted, we've worked through, we've changed?
I don't
mean,
anticipate.
To me, I want to do that.
I don't anticipate a lot of time on the public hearing on
But
these
get it,
changes.
let's get it, need to get it scheduled.
Let's get it
We're talking about schedule, he says we're
Right.
through December, now we could be talking about doing that next year, so.
What do we have
I'm
coming up?
concerned
What do we
about
have
that
coming
not
up? What do we
getting-
have coming up on the let's go to the November, the first November meeting, the 13th. Do we know what's on that night?
Yeah. No, we have a meeting on the
No, we
23rd.
have an
of this
October
month.
meeting on the
That's the only
23rd.
hearing we have in November is on the 13th.
Unless we
Correct.
schedule next.
November 13th is you're going to have an application for mixed-use building on Old Stratfield Road.
That's why we do it the 13th of November. Let's do the public hearing on the 13th. On the stuff we've,
Signs, all that stuff.
exactly.
Can we do that? I mean, is it preferred, or is it changes?
But can't we just do another Tuesday night? I mean, just,
Yeah, one thing, hold on, before I do another meeting, let's talk about, what, do we have, do we have
No,
to set up-
we can't do that on
Hold on, wait,
November the
one
13th.
second, let's one at a time here. Is there, we have to send this out, Commissioner Barrett is right, we have to send these out
Right.
for the regional planning agency.
I was going to slot it for December, but now that we've got these 2 items drop off the agenda, we could do it on the 27th of November if you're inclined to have an additional meeting in November.
So the 27th, perhaps we can do a combination of both the public hearing on what we've already discussed and a planning meeting on, as Commissioner Jacobs has indicated, additional items. Do it on the same night. Will that give us enough time to go to the regional?
Yes, I
authority?
can have that.
I think we're on TV.
I can have it ready for the 27th.
So it's a combination, it would be the current stuff
Tend to run very long, I think it would be
gone
easy to
through,
mix it
and
up
then
with
new
that.
stuff.
But the public hearing will be on planning. Well, if we do the public hearing first on the 27th, when that's done, we'll take the rest of the allotted time that evening for a planning discussion, as long as it takes. And if it's longer, we can always have another meeting for planning, if we don't get to everything, because these are new items we'll be talking about. I don't anticipate a long public hearing on what we voted on, what we've already got consensus on by this commission.
I mean, does anybody know about it? I mean, you know, it's a matter of record. The only
Right.
thing that's been published on it is a few minutes. There was 2 people that attended, and there's a minute that said we talked about parking and signs and things.
No, but well, people, I mean, we had some people out
I don't
because.
know. I don't remember if there's anything controversial in that.
well,
application.
Well, we started December of 2011, December 13th, 11, January 18th, 2012, February 21st, 2012, and thereafter. We had people at the meetings listening
several planning
and talking, so I think that, you know, we've been publishing and notice of these meetings, we've been circulating. You know, I think,
but can we meet in the conference room, which is sort of a nice venue for,
no, not for a public hearing, we want to have the podium in case someone wants to come and address this to us. And,
My priority with, with the future plan is to get these, there were some, and we don't want to talk about what they are now, because this isn't the content thing.
Right.
There was a lot of things in parking and signs and medical building neighborhood that it would be good to get on the books before the next
Yeah.
application comes down their way and say, oh, I wish we'd passed that. So I really want to get that done. I mean, if we want to do a planning meeting the same night, that's okay too. But
Can I just ask this? We spent a good deal of time in that meeting that you chaired.
Yeah.
And I think we worked out what we wanted language-wise.
Yeah.
So certainly there may be members of the public who will read this and have concerns, but so far that hasn't been the case, and these changes, many of them are fairly technical. So can't we simply add the public hearing for those changes to a regular meeting we already have scheduled? It doesn't seem as though it's going to take that long to get through that. It could be the first agenda item, and then go from there. Whether it's already there, the 13th, no, I don't understand.
I'm okay.
It would have been the December meeting,
Okay.
if we're sticking with the schedule we have.
Right, and then why not do that?
Or, now that we've pushed 2 items, now that 2 items fell off the agenda,
Right.
and you get back
And you think we'll
on,
go in December?
Right, we could probably still do that in December.
So let's just lump them together in December and get them out of the way, unless, right? Unless, there's only
I mean,
one that's different.
if someone pulls something off the agenda, I don't have much sympathy for someone who's got something on our agenda that we read the materials. If we want to do planning, they're going to have to wait because we had 2 items tonight. They decided, no, we don't want to talk to you about it tonight. So let them get back in the hopper.
Really, a getter, like, what I'm saying, was that microphone? I'm sorry. What I'm saying is it strikes me that what we can do here is let's add the changes that the existing changes that have been vetted in our planning meeting. Let's put the public hearing together for that December meeting, and that we can hear that and move it along hopefully very quickly, and then go on to the 2 subdivisions if they do appear in December.
I'm thinking-
And let's dedicate, if you want an extra meeting in November, say the 27th, let's let that be totally dedicated to a new planning discussions meeting, and let's make sure that we have a very wide net here amongst the commissioners about what's going on, because I will be honest with you, I love having these discussions, and they do have material benefit on some of these technical issues, but there are some broader concerns with a year left in our term that I want to look at regarding issues related to broader impacts on development. These are things we've touched on in the past, and so that's what I would say. I'd say 27th for a meeting that could be in a smaller, more intimate venue where there is no public hearing attached, just like we did before. That could be Sullivan at 7 o'clock earlier for the staff. We would have to deal with that, and also just then the December meeting, do the public hearing for these established things I think we're in agreement on that have already been decided, and go from there. I mean, I don't think we need to combine. I don't think we have to combine a meeting on the 27th with a public hearing and also a separate planning meeting. Do you really?
Are we having only one December meeting because of Christmas, I assume?
Yeah.
And so when?
Right. But
I don't see any reason.
See, how much discussion are we going to have over stuff we spent 3 hours or 3+ hours on already? Okay, yeah. So but I'm saying that then you can keep the 2 subdivisions on for December if they do indeed get on, and we can start off with getting a review of what we agreed to, let the public have their say about what they think, and then go to the subdivisions.
We should be able to
For December.
I'm okay with either idea. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea to put it in front of the planning meeting also. The only thing you do is you lose the intimacy of that room.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, I'm kind of guilty over reversing the old system, where in the old days, you really did reconfigure the room, as you remember, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Warm.
Yeah, well, it'll be warmer, too. But I'm just saying that in the old days, as you remember, we used to have a square for the executive session with no nameplates.
All right,
But
so we don't fill the allotted time. We have this habit of spending till 11 o'clock doing whatever we decide to do. Is there any disagreement to the 27th having a planning meeting at 7 p.m.? Is that okay? I mean, let's talk about the time. Is 7 okay with you?
7 o'clock, I'll work. I'll try to.
And Jerry, is that okay with you?
It's a
7
struggle,
o'clock?
man. It's a long commute.
7 o'clock, we'll have pizza.
Yeah.
At Independence Hall.
November 25th.
And November 27th, and then in the December meeting, which is the
13th.
13th?
12th.
No, 11th. I think it's the 11th.
In the
That's
December
11th
meeting,
because the 25th is a
we'll
Tuesday.
take
On the 11th of December, that's our December meeting, we will have the public hearing added to the agenda for
The
items,
established.
the signs, the neighborhood design district, and the parking regulations changes we've discussed. Staff will have that submitted to the regional planning folks for their comments, so we'll be ready to go. We'll have it all teed up for that week, if that's okay with everyone?
Yes.
Hearing no objection.
27th at 7 p.m.
November 27th at 7 p.m. We'll get a room at Town Hall, as we've done in the past, and we will have our planning then. And if any of you have ideas before then, please circulate them so we can get if you have comments, I'd ask you to redline them. Don't just send emails I'd rather, we're all computer literate, and I've got a Word version of our regs I could send you, or Jim or Joe will send you a Word version. If you could redline them onto our current regs. If anyone wants a Word version of our regulations.
Yeah, I mean.
Do we all have that, or just me? Does everyone have, no, of all the regs, the entirety? I have it, does the rest of the... In case someone wants to rewrite a section of the regs, they can get a Word version from you and redline their comments in, so we don't... Instead of you having to... So if anyone should want a Word version...
There's PDFs already on the town website, but you can't change it.
You can, because it's PDF on the website,
Yeah, you can't change it.
And this way you...
Unless you have Adobe Distiller Pro. Yeah,
Got it.
Distiller.
If I'd ask you just to do any changes you have...
Good idea, yes.
So if you want to write some changes, ask Jim for a copy. He'll get you in Word, and you can talk to them. He's got some excellent sample language they can share with you. He'll write them for you.
We'll vet that and go. There you go, the 11.
You good?
Does anyone want to talk? I hear you folks call me periodically. I hear from most of you talking about enforcement issues individually. Do we want to talk about that at the next meeting? Talk about it now? I know I hear from many of you individually grumbling about signs and about various enforcement things in town.
Communicate with
I think we should.
Jim and Joe every once in a while.
I think that's what, direct you to staff if you have those.
9 times out of 10, they tell me we're on it.
So I know. I get emails from a lot of you all the time about this sign, that sign as you're driving along. So just keep.
No contact.
So just keep relaying them to staff, and they will get enforcement folks out there and get the signs down. Is there anything else for a planning discussion? Hearing nothing, we will stand in adjournment. Thank you.
What do you got there?